Не стоїтер, я методист видавництва Macmillan Education. Знаходжусь зараз в Києві. В Києві у нас похмура погода, трошечки дощить. Як зазвичай, будь ласка, напишіть в чаті, звідки ви до нас приєдналися, і якось позначте плюсиком, що ви мене добре чуєте. Сані, Львів, Запоріжжя, Дніпро, Біла Церква, Бердичів, Коростень, Полтава. Рада вас вітати усіх. Сподіваюсь, всі мали змогу гарно відпочити цього літа, і ви до нас приєдналися, сповнені енергії і бажання дізнатися щось нове, просто поспілкуватися, підхопити якісь дуже цікаві і корисні ідеї для вашої роботи в цьому навчальному році, який вже невдовзі розпочнеться. Ще кілька хвилин, приєднуються колеги. І Миколаїв у нас, Полтава, Кривий Ріг, Харків приєднався, Луцьк, Черкаси, Сміла, знову Львів і Харків. Вітаю, колеги, рада бачити усіх. Херсон, Чернігів, Тернопіль, Лубни, Дніпропетровська область, знову Чернівці, Бердичів. Супер, як завжди, у нас представлена вся Україна. Ще буквально кілька секунд і будемо ми розпочинати нашу чудову зустріч. Отже, 15:00 за київським часом. Ще раз всіх вітаю. Macmillan Education Ukraine. Радий вітати вас на нашій щорічній онлайн-конференції Back to School. Дуже швидко хочу всіх заспокоїти і нагадати про те, що протягом 5 робочих днів від сьогодні вам на пошту надійде сертифікат учасника з вказаною кількістю годин, і цей сертифікат буде іменний і номерний. І ми записуємо цей вебінар для того, щоб ви мали змогу переглянути його ще раз і нагадати собі якісь дуже цікаві ідеї, а ідеї цікаві абсолютно точно будуть. Я із превеликим задоволенням надаю слово нашій першій спікеру, пані Гоша. Гоша, hello. I can hear you well. I'm really glad that you've agreed to give another amazing talk to Ukrainian teachers. So Gosha, the floor is yours. And dear colleagues, enjoy the talk.
All right. Thank you very much. And hello, everyone. Thank you very much for having me here. I really hope one day we're all going to meet in person. But for now, this is what we have. And this is also great because we can have so many people from all parts of Ukraine learning together and exchanging our knowledge. I'm speaking to you from Hamburg, Germany. And Ina has mentioned the weather in Kiev. In Hamburg, it's quite similar. The summer is just crazy. 15 degrees and rain. So I'm getting used to it. I'm not saying that Warsaw, where I come from, is much better, but this is just insane. It's really cold, you know? So welcome, everyone. And I'm very happy that you're really active in the chat window because I'm going to be asking you some questions and I encourage you to answer them because I will need your help. I will need the help of some fellow teachers. So I'm counting on you. So please support me. So in today's session, We're going to talk about quite a lot of things, actually, because normally we have one topic that we discuss in detail. Now, today is going to be slightly different because we're going to discuss a bit more things. But the leitmotif is practical ideas for the beginning of the school year. And this is what I'm going to be talking about. And the session is divided into 3 parts, and all of them equally important, I believe, and you will hear some ideas that I have never discussed before. So for those of you who have attended some previous sessions organized by Macmillan Ukraine, you will find a lot of new things too. So let's kick off. And let's kick off by admitting that it's been a very long time since we slept very well. And by this, I mean, it's been a long time since we did not feel, I don't want to say worried, but uncertain about what's going to happen the next day, the next week, the next month, because of the pandemic and because of, how everything was organized and everything was done quickly. The decisions everywhere, all around the world, were made very quickly, and we had to adjust on the spot. And it's been quite a challenge. I have to admit that to me, this feeling of uncertainty was really difficult to handle. Because I can quite easily adjust to different contexts, but I need to know in advance. And in this case, because of the global situation, we didn't really get a chance to, prepare and to get as much preparation time as we'd like to. So I think we're all in the same boat all around the world. And we can all agree that 2020 and also the first part of the first half of 2021, we definitely won't miss, right? Or maybe we will. We're going to talk about it in a moment. I'm not going to miss it that much because, we were locked at homes, and the situation has been different, and some of us have gone through some struggles. So I'm not going to miss it as much as I miss some previous years. But when we think about it, when we think about how we feel starting this new school year, we have to remember that the way we feel is also how our students might feel. Some of them might have gone through some problems. There are some, anxieties that appeared, and they're also tired. They might be exhausted. They have gone through the same uncertainty as we have. And I would like you to remember about it throughout this session. Now, what I'm going to do is try and show you how to tackle it and how to make this school year a little bit easier for us, a little bit easier for them, but also I will stay realistic. I don't want to go, I don't want to be overly optimistic because let's be real about it. So when we reflect on the last school year, like, I don't know about you, but I count my years from September to September. I don't count from January to December. I always go September. So the last year and also half of the previous year, I believe it has affected, well, I think it's a fact, it has affected our work in so many ways and so many levels. And I believe that you also have some reflections of that. So if you're willing to write some of them in the chat window, like, how did the last school year affect your work? Can you think of some examples? Maybe you're a bit more tired, or maybe you're more enthusiastic. Maybe, like, to me, it allowed me to move to another country because I work online. So to me, it wasn't also bad. There were also some good things that happened, but it has definitely had a big impact on how I work and the tools I work with and the methods I'm using. So I'd be happy to hear some comments from you. Like, the first thing that comes to your mind, like, how did the last school year affect your work? Because I'm sure that we've got a lot of people here, almost 500 people, and I'm sure you all have, something to say. It was a bit challenging, definitely, right? It was, Julia says it was a bit challenging. I think a bit maybe is a bit of an understatement. I think it was very challenging for all of us, right? Both our private lives and also our professional lives. So, but it has also taught you to live online a lot. Someone, I'm sorry, the comment has, Oliena said, right, that it was a little bit difficult, or maybe it was very difficult, but it has also taught us some new skills, and online lessons affected my eyesight. Yes, some physical consequences. That also happens. Now, I have spent quite a a lot of time talking to other teachers, trying to collect our, reflections on it. And those are the conclusions that I've drawn. And the first one is, first of all, we have all gone through some technical issues. If there's anyone here who has never had any technical issues, please tell me how, because I don't know. And by technical issues, while working online or in a hybrid way, so sometimes online, sometimes offline, sometimes the websites wouldn't load. Sometimes the internet connection was incredibly slow, right? Because suddenly everyone switched to online. Sometimes the camera wouldn't work, the computer wouldn't work, you cannot find your charger and your battery is dead. All of those technical issues. The mic doesn't work, the quality of sound is terrible. All of those things definitely happened to all of us. Hopefully not all of them, but to me, all of them happened, and many more. Once during my online lesson, because I teach from home, the fire alarm went off, and suddenly I had to pause the lesson to turn off the fire alarm, and I had no idea how, because it's the first time I have a fire alarm at home. And I have no idea why it went off. There was no smoke. So all those things happened a lot, I believe, and trust me, they happen to you. You're not alone. There are almost 500 people here. It all happened to all of us. Now, except for that, I believe that we all went through some emotional issues, both we and our students, right? Same with technical issues. So sometimes, and it happened to me too, I've been teaching for so many years, and once I switched to online full time, I started to question my skills and I started to doubt them. And every time I had a lesson which was not great, and I'm not very good with my emotional response to lessons that are not great. I'm really I like to push myself, and I'm sometimes harsh on myself. I would ask myself, am I still a good teacher? Can I really teach? If this lesson was so terrible, then why am I a teacher? And so on. I don't know if any of you has ever asked themselves this question, but I believe that it might have happened to us. Also, I was really, really stressed about my students passing their final exams, and some of them were taking Cambridge exams, and I was also panicking. I was like, did I really, have I prepared them well to those exams? How are they going to pass them? Are they going to pull them off? I don't know. If they don't, is it my fault, or is it just the global situation, the pandemic, the context? I don't know anymore. So those are those emotional struggles that I believe some of us have gone through, and also our students. There were also some academic issues. And I think those are really, really common. And those are the issues that we think about the most, except for the technical issues that are just frustrating. How to teach grammar without the board. I don't know about you, but I'm a classroom animal, I like to call it. I love being in the classroom. This is my context. I love having my markers, my board, my chalk, and everything around me. So how am I supposed to teach if I don't have those things that always made me feel safe, because I knew how to use them? How to practice speaking when we work online, because the dynamics might be slightly different, right? Because of course it depends, because sometimes we have groups of 30 students online. Sometimes we're lucky to have very small groups, but still, speaking when the microphone doesn't work and stuff, this can be really frustrating. How to monitor my students' progress. Because, in our classrooms, we can just walk around the classroom, check homework, and, check the tasks and stuff. How do I do it online? How do I know they're not cheating, right? Oh, this was also an issue, right? How do I make sure that they work individually? How do I make sure that if they have any problems, they actually admit? And rather than pretending that everything's fine and searching for answers or answer keys online. And shall I adjust the material? Shall I teach, let's say, fewer topics, right? Shall I teach less in general? Maybe I should slow down because the pace is, too fast, and maybe my students have problems catching up. And something that I think is the biggest struggle for the teenagers that we teach, and today we're going to be talking about teenagers, because we will be discussing some things based on All Clear. So a little bit older children, well, teenagers, right? They don't like to be called children anymore. Is also something that I call team building issues. And by this, I mean certain relationships and I would say this, the dynamics in our class, because some of our students joined new classes, and they didn't really get a chance to meet their new friends, new classmates face to face in person. Some of them had no chance to meet in person at all, and this is very important. And this something that we maybe can sort of come over relatively easily because we're adult people to students who are 12, 13, 14, up to, like 18. It's really challenging. They need those social connections, and suddenly those connections were, or the chance to build them was taken away from them. And I think this is something that we have to remember, because it might happen that our students will misbehave, maybe have some emotional struggles. This may all show in our classroom, and we have to be prepared for that. We have to be aware of where it comes from. And also something that I find very difficult, but sometimes I forget that my students are teenagers. They're not adult people. They sometimes come across as very mature people, but they're still teenagers, right? And I often already treat them as adult people because they have this vast knowledge on topics I have never heard of, and so on and so forth. They're very fluent with some online tools, but they're not adults, and we have to remember about it, because all of those things, I believe, do have the impact on, it's a fact they have the impact on our job, on our work, but I believe that some of them are likely to continue in September. Those things that we have just discussed, whether we get back to our physical classrooms or we work online, we don't know what's going to happen, right? The situation is slowly getting better and better, but really slowly, and we might go through another lockdown and so on. So again, are those issues likely to continue in September? I'd say yes and no, with stressing yes here. Because first of all, we will never avoid tech issues when we work online. And I believe that it's very important to start blending online into offline, because I think there's no point pretending that this is not our reality anymore and it was just temporary. I think it's going to stay with us. And as long as we use technology, and I think we'll be using it more and more often, we have to just acknowledge the fact that those things are going to be happening, and microphones are going to break and the cameras won't work sometimes. And as I said, there might be another lockdown, and some of the problems we have just discussed, I have just mentioned, some of them have already been solved and you found your solutions, but some of them haven't, because we didn't have enough time, or we didn't have the energy to figure out what to do with them, and we're still stuck. And so yes, those issues are likely to continue in September. But on a positive note, also partly no, because our students and I and we both we already know how to tackle some of those issues, especially tech issues, because we've been through so many. We already know that sometimes you just need to calm down, restart your computer. Sometimes you have to, turn off whichever program you use, whichever software you use, and turn it on again, restart it, right? And remember, the more problems you encounter, the more likely you'll learn to solve them. So, and also the less stressed we are, right? The fifth time my student's internet connection broke, I was like, yeah, okay, I'm not going to stress about it. Just it happens, right? It's okay. And also, I believe that because we have been using online tools and we have been giving online lessons for so long, on and off, right? Because I know that some of you also got back to face-to-face teaching, but because there was so much of it, I believe that we have all, more or less, to some extent, we have found our own pace, our own rhythm of working online. We already have our new habits, new routines, to take care of our back and our neck, right? But also our eyes. Again, to some extent, but I do believe that some of those problems can be avoided just because we have already got used to it, at least a little bit, right? Now, I don't want to pretend, as I said, that everything's going to go smooth and easy and, everything's going to be fine, because we will encounter some problems. We do every year, be it online or offline. There are always some new problems. Like when you think you have seen everything, suddenly you see something new, right? And I think it's happened to everyone. So let's be realistic about it. And let's not be, again, overly optimistic, saying yeah, it's going to be fine. Well, hopefully, yes, but it might not be as fine as we would like it to be. But I think instead of just pretending that it's going to be fine, let's just do everything that we can to be prepared and to foresee as many issues as we can, and to use our prior experience to solve them in the future too. And the first thing I'd like to talk about, which I believe is incredibly important because of the reasons I've mentioned before, is building strong rapport with your students. Now, this is something that I believe we do it offline. We have all those icebreakers and so on. Now, I believe it's even more important now because, as I said, maybe some of you haven't met their students in person yet. Right? Is there anyone who had a class you taught online, but you still haven't met your students in person? I have students like that. And so it's a little bit more difficult, right? And by rapport, what I mean, but what I mean is the definition of it would be, first of all, establishing mutual trust. We have to trust our students and they have to trust us. And this is incredibly important because also this cheating aspect. In Poland, there was a contest, the national maths contest and so on. And I think normally about 3 students, I'm just guessing the numbers now, but it was more or less like that, like 3 to 6 students made it to the top, like getting 100%. When it was held online, it was, I think, about 600 students. I mean, you understand, right? So sometimes it's difficult, but we do have to build this trust, and we do have to make sure that our students feel that we trust them and they trust us in return. Another aspect of building rapport is friendship. And of course, we're not making close friends with our students, right? This is not what we do. But what I mean is the friendly atmosphere in our classroom. Incredibly important, because remember that those struggles that we went through as adult people, those kids went through as teenagers. And it must be also emotionally draining for them. And we have to make sure that they feel safe and comfortable in our classroom, be it online or offline. And also affinity, which is some sort of this sympathy because of shared characteristics, because of shared experience. I think it's very important to make our students realize that what they have gone through, we have also gone through. And we're not robots, we're people, we're human beings, and we also have some struggles. And we are here to support them, but we also understand that sometimes it's difficult because we go through same difficulties. So while building this rapport with your students, I believe that on the one hand, we need to sometimes give them the helping hand, which we always do anyway as teachers. And sometimes we need to be their partner, showing them like, yes, I understand you. Not because I hear what you say, but because I have experienced the same thing. So now it's time for a game break. I would like to show you a game which is inspired by a game that I witnessed. One of my friends, he started studying this year, and but all the lectures were held online. So the university decided to have some, ice-breaking events so the students can get to know each other, because even though online, they still have to cooperate. And they played this game, and I just loved it. And even though I'm not a student, and it was just my friend, and I just happened to be in the same room, I was just sitting and looking. I was like, yeah, this is great. I'm going to use it in my lesson. So in a moment, I'm going to ask you some questions. And those are yes/no questions. And if your answer is yes, type Y. If your answer is no, type N. Okay? And this is a game that I have already tried with my students, and it was just great, and they loved it. So as we go through the game, I think you're going to understand why we're doing this, but let's give it a try. So the first question: have you also felt frustrated because of spending so much time in front of the screen? Just like I did. I have. Yes. Oh, someone said no. That's also good, because there might be different answers. And maybe some of them feel much better working online. And there is no good or bad answer here. We're talking about our personal experience. So even though most of you say yes, there are also some of you who say no, which is great. And that's also what happens in the classroom. The next question: did you also suffer from back pain? Yeah? All right, I think this is like, we sit in front of our computers. Oh, someone was very like, yeah, right? Some of you know, some of you, yes. I started to do a lot of stretching and back exercises because I just, I had such a terrible back pain. I just couldn't handle it anymore. And yeah, so, all right. Were you also turning your camera off once in a while to stretch a bit while teaching online? And I have to admit that this is what I did. I was very open about it. When my students were filling in some, gap fills and stuff in their books, because I also have their physical books in front of them, I was like, okay, so now you've got about 5 minutes to do this exercise. I'm going to turn off my camera because I need to stretch because my back hurts. If you feel like doing the same thing, you're free to do it. Because we have built this mutual trust, I trust that they use this time to actually stretch rather than do something else, right? So I'll just, let me present, I'll just turn off my camera, stand up and stretch a little bit and go back to my classroom. And I believe it's fine. So I see sometimes, some of you say, there is no sometimes, there's only yes and no. So, right? No, sometimes it's also, of course, a good answer. All right, I've got a couple of more questions. Were you also drinking way too much coffee? I've already had 3 cups of coffee today. I don't know about you. I woke up pretty early, did my morning workout and stretched a bit, and then I just drank 1 cup after another. But I see that most of you say no. All right, you're better at this than I am, definitely. I was so tired because of the light from the screen. I just kept drinking coffee, too much coffee. At some point, I switched to decaf because I thought this is not good. Like, this is not going to do any good to my body. Right. Oh, someone's drinking coffee now. Enjoy it. Okay. Have you also felt like a super teacher at least once? For instance, when you had a great lesson and everything went fine. You see, some of those questions are really positive. Like, when you planned the lesson, everything went according to the plan. There were no technical issues and no one disappeared from your classroom. And you were like, yes, I pulled it off. I'm amazing. It happened to me a couple of times, as it happened to many of you too. Congratulations. I'm very, very happy to hear it. If it hasn't happened to you, maybe you're a bit too harsh on yourself. I'm sure it happened to everyone. All right. 2 more questions. Do you also feel that you can add more skills and tools on your teaching portfolio, on your CV? I feel it. Like, I have learned to use so many online tools and digital tools I have never used before. And suddenly my CV is like, yeah, there you go. You see, we don't think about it that much, but our experience, our CVs are just getting so much better, aren't they? Right? And the last question, will you also appreciate face-to-face lessons more from now on? Who's going to appreciate them more? I'm definitely going to appreciate them more. I'm hoping to get back to my physical classroom as soon as I can here in Germany, but and I'm sure I'm going to appreciate it so much more. I'm just going to I don't know, just run around the classroom and just be happy about it. In fact, I may go there a little bit earlier, just enjoy the view and the surroundings, right? 50-50. Yes. Again, there are no bad answers here. It's only your personal experience. And actually, if you say not sure, it's also a good answer, right? Because maybe you're still not sure, because maybe online is actually great for you and maybe you love it, right? Which is also fine, actually. That's great, because we might need to teach online more and more. All right. So maybe before we jump, have you noticed that in every question there was this word also? You probably have noticed that. Now, this is on purpose, because what I wanted to do here is, rather than just asking questions, starting with who felt this and that, what I did is this little trick. I talked about my experience, which I assumed most of you had, and I used it to create this bond between us, because I feel so much better knowing that I wasn't the only one going through those struggles. You also have it. Like, suddenly you feel that, again, now we have over 500 people here, and there are 500 people in this digital room who feel just like you. And when you felt down and feel like, oh my God, like, am I the only one suffering like that? You see that not. Oh, am I the only one not complaining about online because I actually like it? No, you're not the only one. Just because structuring the questions like that. And this is something that I believe we should do with our students. This is something that helps us create this bond with our students. And it's maybe slightly different between us here because we're all teachers. And in our classroom, we have, again, different relationships. We have student-teacher, but still we're human beings going through same things. And I believe that by showing your students that they that you also have felt bad sometimes, and that you also have felt much better sometimes, you show them that you have much more in common than they think, right? It's not like the teacher, the master, and the students that we don't care about. No, we do care about it because we understand them, we feel them. My question is, how about killing two birds with one stone? Because I use those questions that I wanted to ask you because you're also teachers and you're not studying the language, you're teaching it, right? So, but we still have to remember that in our classroom, except for building this rapport and building this bond, we're also supposed to teach. So by killing two birds with one stone, I mean, why not doing the same exercise with our students, but using or putting putting focus on some language that we want to revise. This exercise comes from All Clear 5. It comes from the starter unit, in which we're supposed to revise some things that the students should already know. So we're just making sure, it's also about mixed ability students. We're making sure that we're all like in the same point, so to speak, right? And we're making sure that our students can catch up easily, and we see who's stronger, who's weaker, what we need to revise, and so on. So what I do is I take one exercise, and this exercise is about revising time, talking about time and hours. So I'll say, okay, so now a question from you to your classmates based on this exercise. So it has to be somehow about the time. And the question might be, assuming that our online lesson started at 9, did you also wake up at 8:55 most of the time, for example? Or did you also go to sleep after midnight, right? So same questions, creating this bond between our students, helping them creating bonds between one another, but also revising some language, because this shows us if they remember how to name hours, if they remember this 8:55 or like 9 to 5, rather than, I don't know, something else they might come up with, right? Now, let me show you another example. We're going to jump to All Clear, but this time level 6, all right? So present simple, we want to revise some grammar. So we say, okay, look at this and that page, all right, in your books, in your old books, or you can put it on the screen, or you can just, show it in your book if it's a physical classroom. And they're supposed to ask questions based on this grammatical topic. So, you can have a round of 3 questions at the beginning of every lesson, right? It doesn't have to take the whole lesson. And you might go, do you also like to eat during online lessons? I do. I don't do it often because I hardly ever get a chance, but it did happen to me when I had 6 consecutive lessons with very short breaks. Sometimes I had a bowl of peanuts or like some other nuts. And when my students were doing some exercises, I would just turn off my mic and camera and just munch on them very quickly because I was just starving. I didn't have time to have dinner, which I also told my students, by the way. I'm very open about, I'm not pretending that I'm, better than them. I also need to eat, right? I'm a human being. Does your dog also bark a lot during online lessons? Some questions might be funny. And so again, you're revising grammar here, but also create this bond like, oh, I'm not the only one whose cat kept jumping on my keyboard. And, and it's kind of funny and we share experience, but on top of it, we do revise grammar, right? All Clear 7. So we have this exercise with some pictures, right? So vocab. And here we have different activities. And here there is another way I structure the question. Instead of have you also, did you also, or will you also, whichever tense you want to revise, who else, right? It's not only me. So who else missed PE lessons? So my students are supposed to create those questions by just taking those pictures and being inspired by them. Who else missed PE lessons? Right? Who else took up a new hobby? Look, it can strike such an interesting conversation. Oh, you took up some new hobby. So who started to play the guitar? And play the guitar is one of the expressions that I've got here, right? Again, let your students do it. Just give them some examples, let them do it, and let them go crazy. And trust me, you'd be surprised with how creative they can be, and by how great questions, what great questions they can actually make. And they are also going to be enthusiastic about it because they're talking about their personal experience. This is the moment they can, vent a little bit, right? They can, just talk about their frustrations, but also show off a little bit and, brag about their new hobbies and stuff, right? So I encourage you to do so. Now, one of my favorite philosophers, Alain de Baton, he's a contemporary philosopher and also the founder of this organization called School of Life. They have their YouTube channel. It's about emotional education. I've been watching a lot of it during the pandemic because it's important to me to understand, what I am going through, but also what my students are going through. He said that feeling lost and crazy and desperate belongs to a good life as much as optimism, certainty, and reason. And I agree 100%, but as a teacher, I'd like to add that revising some material while doing so belongs to a good teacher's life, right? So make sure that your students understand that it's perfectly fine that they felt desperate, frustrated, going crazy, being tired. It's a part of our life, and so is optimism, certainty, and reason, and all those good things, right? So make sure they feel safe and they know that this is fine, right? But also revise some grammar while doing so, right? Okay, so let's move to step 2. My mixed ability class, take 2. Now, this is a topic that we talk about a lot, and there were also some previous sessions about mixed ability classes. And I believe that this is something you find incredibly interesting because we all work with mixed ability classes. And I believe that some of you also chose to work with All Clear because it focuses on mixed ability classes and facilitates teaching mixed ability classes. So that's probably one of the reasons some of you still work with a book, because it's just great for different levels in one classroom, right? So let me explain the subtitle here. Take 2. What I mean is that I think that working online has strongly affected the abilities of my students. Now, let's say we had some face-to-face lessons, and now we switched to online. We observed a lot of changes, and now we switch back to offline, like face-to-face or hybrid, and we see that again, the dynamics has changed in our classroom, right? So what do you think? Has working online affected the abilities of our students? What's your take on that? I see yeses here. I see yeses. Let's develop this topic a little bit. Well, I agree with you. Some of you say, of course, you're very certain about it. I'm with you. Well, I think yes, it definitely has, but also no. I like to answer yes or no to yes/no questions because, it's never black and white. It's everything in between, right? So, but yes, it definitely, in some aspects, in some fields, in some areas, it has affected the abilities of our students, because some students felt much more confident working online as they had some tech skills that suddenly became very useful. So you might have had some students who are linguistically a little bit weaker, but they felt empowered because suddenly they can use the tools that are so obvious to them, and they saw, other people struggling with, let's say, Zoom or Skype or Google Classroom, whatever you use, and they were good at it. So suddenly the weaker students who are not motivated become much more motivated, right? Some stronger students became less engaged in the lessons. Now, this is not a good thing. This is a thing, and this is not something we want to observe, but it might have happened because they, for example, struggled with the amount of screen time. Or maybe they need more interaction, and they did not get that much interaction during our online lessons. right? So also like the change might be positive, but might also be a little bit negative. Or maybe you had face-to-face lessons, you had some really engaged, really enthusiastic students. Then during the online period, they sort of like took a step back and they became a bit more anxious. Maybe they couldn't really figure out how to work online. Now you're getting back to face-to-face and suddenly they're great again, right? So observe it, because I believe that many things have happened, and if we think about, if we reflect on that, that's very important for us to know, because that's going to have an impact on how we plan our lessons. And I don't know about you, I tend to put labels on my students, like by which I don't mean like good student, bad student, but I mean, okay, this, like, I'm trying to make those mental notes about my students, but I also have to remember, and I think we all should remember, that those labels might change. Also, some weaker students use this time to catch up with the material, right? This might have happened too, because suddenly they had more time, they didn't have to commute, they didn't have to, take a bus that takes them to school, and they spent 60 hours in the morning, 60 hours, 60 minutes in the morning and in the afternoon. So it's 2 hours a day. Maybe they used it as an opportunity to catch up. Or maybe quite the opposite, because they have taken up a new hobby and they didn't have time for learning, right? But also no, because some students were equally well online and offline, face-to-face. Some students would just be, always motivated. In some classes, strong students remained more engaged, while weaker students struggled a bit more, right? But the ratio hasn't really changed, right? So this is also an option. Like, again, we have almost 600 people here in this meeting, in this conference, and you all have a different experience, and you might all have different comments on that, right? So there's no one answer. That's why yes and no. Now, my idea of dealing with mixed ability classes is offering some online solutions in our face-to-face classes. Because when we talk about mixed ability, of course, we mean also grammar, vocab, the speed with which they acquire new knowledge, and so on and so forth. And but to talk about it, we would need 3 different separate sessions. What I'd like to focus on now is the impact working online versus working offline had on our mixed ability classes, and if there had been some positive changes, what can we do to actually keep up with them and to take advantage of it? So my idea, again, is offering online solutions in our physical classrooms. So the students who maybe felt much better online, they can still feel comfortable and they can work a little bit better just because we give them options. And I'm not talking about bringing your laptop to the classroom and asking your students to bring their laptops and working online in a classroom, right? But I'm talking about giving them more options, right? Let me show you some examples. I've got 3 examples here, one from each level, so we're getting more practical now. The first example, there is this exercise in All Clear 5, level 5, the red one. So the topic is superheroes, and there's some reading about superheroes and so on and so forth. And then there is this task: order the words to make questions in your notebook. All right, so physical classroom, we make it in our notebooks. In my online classroom, I do it in Google File, because I usually use Google Drive to work with my students. Some students love to write with their hands, and it's also important. So I encourage my students to do it anyway. But the way you can deal with this, if you come back to your physical classroom, is assign pairs. So, for example, a stronger student and a weaker student, more or less, right? Or students who work better online and students who work better offline. Let them work together on this task. Do it in their notebooks together, right? So the stronger student can take the lead and can, make sure that the answers are correct. Now, you might think, but okay, if the stronger student does everything, the weaker student doesn't work. I'll show you how to deal with it. At home, or even during the lesson, if you have access to computers or also phones, now you can do everything on your phone, let the weaker student prepare a presentation with the questions. So then they can show the presentation in the class and ask those questions to their peers, right? So this is blending offline and online. As you can see, it's nothing spectacular. It's basically writing things down in the notebooks, but also writing them in a digital form. So the students who like digital, they feel much better. And if in the first part, the stronger student, if they had taken the lead, the weaker student, weaker, right? I mean, of course, let's not label it that strongly, but you know what I mean. The student who's going to prepare the digital set of questions, they're going to drill those correct forms. It's going to happen anyway. The learning is going to happen anyway. So let's do it. And also, stronger students here get the chance to become sort of mentors, not bosses, but mentors. They get a chance to be supportive. Again, you make your students bond together, but you also make sure that those stronger students and weaker students have different tasks and they work on a variety of tasks, and you can make sure that the weaker student gets enough time to drill the structure, because if you assign this presentation as homework, they would have some time to process it, to copy it, to make sure there are no typos, because they're going to be screening the presentation in the classroom, right? And they will get some more time to practice it. So you're not taking away this precious time from your stronger students in your classroom. At the same time, you give a lot of support to your weaker students. Let's have a look at all clear 6, level 6. So we have this task here: listen and repeat the words. How do you say them in your language? Some translations. We'll get back to that. And then we have some pictures. We have to match them with the programs in the previous exercise, and some programs are not in the picture. Now, students who feel more comfortable working online, instead of just, repeating the words and translating them in the classroom, they can prepare a Kahoot quiz. They can prepare a Quizlet set. All of those tools are for free, and I'm sure that you've used many of them. There's this word wall, so many tools. Pick those that you like, pick those that that you used. I started with preparing so many sets myself, and I thought, why don't I let my students do it? They can do it, and they're going to benefit from it. Because again, those students who love working online, who love Kahoots, let them do it, let them have fun. And, the learning is going to happen here anyway. They're going to be copying words. So you can make they can make those Quizlet sets, the word in English, the word in their native language. They can make a Kahoot quiz with one word in English, 3 different translations, or the other way around, the word in their native language, 3 different English words, right? So also with some weaker students, I'm sure that most of the students are going to be enthusiastic about it because it's just like doing those things. And then you can use it in the revision part in your lesson, right? So ready-made lesson for you, right? More fun for them and more learning for them, less work for you. It's a win-win. Weaker students can also work with the answer key. Because again, there's going to be a lot of drilling here. They're going to be copying those words. They're going to be practicing spelling. They're going to, click, in many tools, you can just write the word, click the recording, and they're going to hear it. The learning is happening here, whether we want it or not. And of course we want it because that's our job, right? If, on the other hand, you feel that your students are tired of online, and they just do not want to work in front of their computers, they can prepare a set of taboo cards or flashcards, physical flashcards. Take some scrap paper, let them cut it, and make flashcards. And you can also use those cards in the revision in the next lesson, right? Or you can tell your students to decide, okay, who wants to work on a Kahoot quiz? Sit here, you work on your Kahoots, and those who prefer to work with their hands and pens, you sit here and you prepare those flashcards, right? So then you can also see, is this very visual feedback on how your students like to work, and then you make this mental note or a physical note about who likes what. So then when you assign new tasks, you already know which students would feel better online, which students feel better offline, how to combine it, and so on. So much knowledge for us that we need to plan our lessons. Let's have a look at all clear 7. All right, so we're already talking about much more advanced students, right? Their English is already quite good, isn't it? Right, we're proud of them already. They've been through so much. What I like about about the task that I'm showing you from All Clear 7 is that it already blends physical and digital. And again, I'm going to stress it. Let's not pretend that we worked online just for a moment. Digital reality is our new reality. And we are going to work in the digital world more and more. And we have to come to terms with it. And let's take advantage of it. Right? So there's this task, which is create a digital wall, follow the steps below. Right? Choose a sport that you like, find information, videos, photos, decide how you're going to arrange your information. There's so much going on here, right? It's not only the language, but it's also designing some soft skills and also presentation skills and so on and so forth. And then send the link to your digital wall to your classmates, ask them to add to your digital wall. So this is already online versus online. That is not my idea. It's in the book that we're working with, right? But I would like to give you some tips here, because create a digital wall might be quite a vague term. Like, what does it mean? Where do I do it? And so on. And I'd like to show you 2 tools and one thing that I also do to make those exercises more digital. All right. The first tool I use is called Trello. I don't know if you're familiar with Trello. Those tools are for free, or at least to some extent. Trello is a tool that I use also myself for my own personal research and notes. So you can see the screen from my private Trello. At some point, I got really interested in the topic of AI, artificial intelligence, how it works. And I found this great topic about music algorithms and stuff. I did not know much about it. I do have a friend, though, who works in IT. He works with AI, and he sent me some interesting links. So what I did was I started to collect it on my digital board. He has the access to it. So when he finds something interesting, this is quite an old screenshot. Now it's like vast, the board. When he has some interesting information, he would just post them there, right? He would add another list. Yep, we all have access to it. So if I have some questions, I post them there. And rather than just bombarding him with my questions on the phone, I would just post it there. And once in a while, when he has some free time, he just checks it and, I don't know, sends me some articles that answer my questions, right? So you can see, this is the way I use it privately. You can see how you can use this in your classroom already, can't you? All right. Another tool that I'm sure many of you are familiar with is Padlet. Now, Padlet used to be fully free. At some point, they started to charge, but you can still have up to 3 boards for free per one email address. So if you teach, let's say 6 different groups, you can just have 2 different email addresses, and on each address you have 1 account on Padlet, and then you have 6 boards for free. And Padlet allows you to create those digital boards. Again, you send the link, your students have the access to that, and they can comment, they can post some videos, so on and so forth. So they can do a lot of things here. What's great about it is also, if you work with, let's say, grade 7 only, and you have 4 different classes, you can make one Padlet for all your classes and make them cooperate, you know, between their classes. So you're going to have a lot of people there, but it's okay. So you can ask, for example, like one class as the assignment they get, I don't know, find a picture that represents this and that, and another class's homework would be a comment on each picture. Right? You can see which students are into it. You can see how they work with it. And if you have students who prefer to work offline, not online, you can ask them to look at this Padlet and then talk about it in the classroom. Prepare a report that they can write on a piece of paper, right? Choose the most interesting comments, write them down, make a poster, and so on, make an infographic, whatever you choose. Now, another thing that I also do, if you don't want to use any tools, which is also like might be your case, this is something I prepared for the purpose of this presentation, but this is something I did a lot with my students in a physical classroom. Again, this is taken from All Clear 7, and again, this task in which you have smartphones. So again, blending digital and physical. And there's this task, choose one of the events below and use your own ideas. And the students are supposed to have a conversation here, exchange ideas, and so on. What I do is I ask them to take their phones. On each smartphone, there's this notebook thing, and you can see the screenshot from mine. And normally you can make a checklist, or you can also add pictures. So what I did here is I copied my role in this dialogue. So request, donate a cake, charity, the Red Cross, blah, blah, blah. And I added this picture. I took a picture of useful language. So I have everything on my phone, and then your students can easily walk around, talk with different people. They don't have to carry their books with them. And once they have discussed a topic, they can just tick it. It goes to the bottom of the list then, and they see what else they have to do. It's also great for exams because I believe that's what they have to do during the exams, right? There are some tasks and they have to, tick all the boxes, right? Again, if your students don't want to use their phones, it's fine. If they do, let them, because this can be so helpful for them. And if you do this, the students can observe that the online year, or year and a half, in fact, was not a year wasted. And I think it's very important to stress that for them to understand that it wasn't a year wasted in front of our computers. And the tools that they used back then, they did not learn it for nothing. They still apply in real life. Some students may struggle with grammar, but they have excellent IT skills they can use to improve their English. So show them that except for your linguistic skills that might be stronger or weaker, there are so many other things, so many other qualities that you have. Use them, right? Ask them to make infographics, presentations, quizzes, whatever they want, right? Give them options. You can work with your workbook, right? Or you can do it in a different way. Let them choose. And it also allows you to trace your students' progress as the year goes by, especially with those digital boards. Now, there is one more thing I'd like to talk about really briefly. And this is something that is quite challenging to us teachers, but this is something I just fell in love with. And I would like to show you, well, what made me so excited, and maybe you like it and maybe you would like to give it a try. I believe that sometimes it's a good idea to let our students take over. It also creates bonds between us and our students. Now, this is something I repeat a lot today because I really believe it's extremely important, especially after the whole year or year and a half of being isolated. This emotional aspect of learning, I believe this is crucial, and we cannot pretend that it doesn't exist. So I do believe that it's okay to show our students what our work looks like, and what our how we prepare our lessons, what's the decision-making process, and so on. So we can feel them, but they can also feel us. And to let our students take over, we need to, by which I mean contribute into preparing lessons, we need to think about three things. The first thing is reflecting on our lesson planning. So what I did was I was like, okay, so when I plan my lessons, and some of you might know I'm really into lesson planning, but doing it efficiently. So not spending hours on that. So first I think, okay, so when I plan my lessons, what do I really do? I do this, that, blah, blah, blah. Think about it. It might be different for all of you. The second step, which of those steps that I do while planning my lessons can be done by the students? One of my trainers told me many years ago when I was learning to become a teacher, he said, don't ever do things that your students can do. And he was actually talking about arranging chairs, but I think it's true for preparing lessons too. Why do I have to do everything if my students can actually benefit from taking part in the process? It's not because I'm lazy and I don't want to do it. It's because there are so many benefits of letting them actively participate in creating lessons. And the third thing you should think about is how can the students contribute using the skills that they have and we also have, or maybe we don't have. Because maybe there are some things that you're not very good with. Maybe you're not very good with preparing PowerPoint presentations, you don't like it, but you have students who love it, or you have students who are good at it. Why not let them do it? Maybe you have students, let's say you discuss sports in class. This is one of the topics in the book, right? Maybe there's one student who is a professional sportsman, and I don't know, preparing to take part in the Olympics or any sporting event, really. And maybe they have a vast knowledge about a topic from the book, let's say rugby, and they could prepare a quiz or a presentation. You can go, you know what? In the next lesson or next week, we are going to be talking about sports. Now, I'm not very good at sports, but I know that some of you actually train a lot after school. So how about you prepare a quiz for us, because you know so much more about sports than I do, and I need your help. You see, we're partners here. You acknowledge the fact that there are some things that they know better, just in the same way you expect them to acknowledge the fact that you know the language better and you're willing to share your knowledge, right? Okay, maybe you have a student who's a big fan of board games and they can prepare a game for us. Maybe some of your students have great photography skills and they could prepare an album, or for example, take pictures of some vocab from the upcoming lesson, and then, in pairs, they could show each other pictures, or like one student can show the pictures and the other students have to say what they see in those pictures, and maybe they'll just be very nice artistic pictures. Some students might have great tech skills, and maybe something I love doing, they could teach the class how to use some tools that you would like to use in your lessons. You say, you know what, there is this new quiz platform, let's call it Quiz Fun, and I'm not sure how to use it, but I know that you're much better with those tools. So how about, I don't know, Misha, how about you teach us how to do it? Okay, I might need your help here too. Let them do it. Let them show their skills. Of course, they do it in English, so there's a lot of practice, but that's how they can take over. And very quickly, let me show you 3 more specific examples based on the book, so you can see how it works in reality. The first one, let's take it step by step. So level 5, you have this lesson about superheroes called colorful characteristics, and you have 3 superheroes, 3 teenagers talking about their favorite superheroes. And there's task 2, read the text again, complete the sentences in your notebook. Now, what I do is I'd tell my students, okay, so we're going to work on some reading today, blah, blah, blah. And task 2, you can change it in any way you want, okay? You take over. You're free to come up with whichever way you want to do this task, to approach this task. You can turn it into a game, a quiz, a drawing, anything you really want, all right? But it has to include what we already have in the task. Okay, so you're sort of like working on what you already have rather than, creating a new task, because creating a new task would be much more time consuming, and we just want to take it easy, just a small step here. So, for example, the students might go, okay, instead of writing the country name, let's draw its flag. Now, some of those answers would be country names. Some of them are made up countries, so they can design a flag, design a logo, whatever they want. Or they might have some crazy ideas. So students have to write everything upside down or with their eyes closed. Again, this is just one exercise. And if you see that they love, coming up with crazy ideas, such as, I don't know, let's write it with our eyes closed, you know that maybe they need a little bit more fun during your lessons, right? And this is also some information that you need to prepare your future lessons. Now, this was just one task. What you also can do is, if you have a look here, you've got the whole lesson, like massive lesson on grammar. You can split it in 2 lessons actually, but maybe you have, I don't know, more time. You have a 90-minute long lesson, it depends on your context. And there are so many tasks here. And what you could do is you could tell your students, okay, so normally when I prepare lessons for you, as you can see, we don't do everything. I choose some things that I think would be good for you and you'd benefit from. I would like you to do the same thing, all right? So let your students decide what this grammar lesson should look like. So ask them to work in groups, maybe 2, maybe 3, depending on the size of your class, right? And ask them to decide which exercises are most useful for them. Because maybe some of those exercises think, oh, it's so easy, right? I don't need it. Of course, I'm not saying they'll be right, but it's also some feedback for you. How many tasks they think they can do? How many of them can be done in a 45-minute long lesson? How would they like the grammar to be explained? Do they want the grammar to be explained in their native language, in English, by elicitation, by a video, by playing a game, in a presentation? They would come up with many different ideas. And ask them to decide what game would help them practice this topic best. You see, they get a sneak peek into your lesson planning process, and also they are in charge. They feel that they are part of the process, that they don't just have to come and listen to you. They can also have their comments, and they also feel that their opinions are important. But other things that happen is that the students show you what pace suits them best, because if they decide on how many exercises you're going to do, they show you that maybe 10 exercises is a bit too much for one lesson, like one too many, maybe 8 would be better. This is the feedback you get from them. They give you feedback on presenting grammar in a way which is most effective for them, and like when it comes to their needs, right? Because maybe they really need to hear some things in their native language sometimes, because it's getting more and more complicated. I'm not telling you to give a lecture on grammar in your native language, but maybe they just need a little bit more of that. Maybe sometimes you need to explain things in English, elicit some things, but then just to make sure they feel comfortable, sum it up in your native language. Right? If they need it, let's be open to that. Why not? And again, it's not about lecturing them about present simple. It's more about listening to what they need. And also, they feel they're part of this learning/teaching process, right? And they're treated as equals, which makes them more confident and more engaged in the lesson. And Olga said, I wish I had more lessons a week. This is, I assume, Olga, that you just don't have enough time for everything, but this is such a good thing to hear. Like, I wish I could teach more, right? Okay, one more example from All Clear 7. Now, this time, so we talk about letting your students prepare one exercise, letting your students prepare one lesson. Now we're going to let our students prepare the whole unit. Now, as you know, All Clear starts with those starter units that are supposed to kind of sum up what has been done before, and there's this initial revision so we know where we stand. So tell the students to bring, I'm talking about level 6, 7, to bring their books from the previous year, or maybe you have them in the school library. Ask them to work in groups to prepare a starter unit themselves. All right? Let's say 3 grammar tasks, 3 vocab tasks, or 2 grammar, 2 vocab, 2 classroom language, or whatever. It's entirely up to you, right? And tell them that you will actually use those exercises to work with other groups, to work with lower grades. And you're going to tell them how it went. And tell your students that the tasks should be based on the material discussed in the previous year. So they take their old books, they just go through them, and based on that, they pick their own topics. Of course, we're not going to revise everything. They choose the topics, which is really important to me, because most of the time, our students would choose the easiest topics, right? They would hardly ever choose present perfect. They would hardly ever choose, working with the articles. They would choose something super easy for them, which is also important for me to know, because I know that if none of them chose articles, it means I should probably revise it, because they do not feel confident enough to turn the topic to prepare an exercise based on this topic. Right? And also, something very important, your students will get the chance to reflect on how much they have already learned, but also that, you give them this opportunity to look at their old books that they usually tend to forget about, the moment the school year is over, and just remember about some things they've learned. Maybe also say, I don't know, it's a chance to hear things such as like, oh, I don't remember that. Listen carefully to what they say, especially when they work in groups and they think you don't hear them. And also make sure that if you decide to let your students take over sometimes, make sure that you leave enough space, enough room for some discussion and for some reflection, and ask them, okay, how did it feel to prepare it? Was it challenging? Was it not? Would you like to do it more often, or was it just a one-time thing and you're kind of like you'd like me to do it? Or maybe would you like to take over during reading lessons only, or maybe during grammar lessons only? How often would you like to do it? So this is also so much information for you, right? So to sum up very quickly, the whole presentation, just to wrap it up, so you remember what we talked about. First of all, let's not pretend that the next year is going to be super easy, because it's not going to be super easy. I don't think any year could be super easy for us, but let's just be aware of the fact that there might be some new problems, there might be some old problems, they always strike back, especially if unsolved. So let's remember about that. And let's remember that one of the ways we can deal with those problems is creating stronger bonds with our students and working on this, creating a good rapport with them, and working on it, working on our relationship with our students, but also supporting them while working with one another. And remember that for mixed ability classes, now mixed ability is not only as it used to be, grammar, vocab, reading, and so on. Now it's also online and offline, right? Because those are also abilities, and they also might have, some of them might have developed some skills, some of them maybe not, and maybe some students need more support with the tools, not the language, right? And then you can ask those students who are good with tools to support those other students. And also do remember that it's okay, it's actually a good idea to let your students contribute in into this lesson planning process. And let's use the skills that maybe we don't have but they do, or let's allow them to show off with some great skills they have that could help us prepare our lessons, but also can help them learn some language. So at some point I mentioned this quote from Alain de Baton, as I said, one of my favorite contemporary philosophers. So I'd like to finish with another quote from him, which goes, anyone who isn't embarrassed of who they were last year probably isn't learning enough. So if you had made many mistakes, if some of your lessons had been terrible, if some of the things that you wanted to try out hadn't worked, don't worry about it. Remember that, like, this is the way we learn also, right? This was all new to us, and if you are not a little bit embarrassed or a little bit guilty about some things that happened to you, like the fire alarm going off, then it means that maybe you're missing an opportunity to learn something. So thank you very much for this session, and thank you very much for being so active in the chat window. I'm honored to have been given the chance to talk to you, and I'm hoping to see you maybe face to face, maybe online. We're good with both. So thank you very, very much. All right, I think Inna should appear any moment now. Oh, but she isn't here. But that's okay. I'm sure she's gonna come back in a moment. I hope she's not. Ah, yeah, okay. All right. Okay, so thank you very much. Bye-bye.
плюсик. Так, я бачу плюсики. Угу.
Okay, don't know if anyone can hear me because I can't hear any sounds, from our hosts. All right. Is that a yes to my sound question? Hi. Yes, great. All right. So, trusting that you're there, I think I can begin. So, hello, everyone. At this moment, I would say, it's good to see you, but I would say it's good to trust that you're there. Okay, it's a webinar, which there are over like 500 of us, and well, you can see me, but I can't see you. So as I said, it's all based on trust. So first, it's a webinar where I'm going to speak most of the time, but it's an active one. So I'm going to present, the housekeeping rules. First of all, thank you for all the hellos. Okay, so I will expect you to do a number of tasks today. Time flies when you're having fun. Time flies when you get engaged. And so the first thing is that do you, and this time, I would like you to wave at the screen, and I trust you do that. I would like you to wave at the screen if you think that engaged teachers can produce engaged students. I hope you're waving. All right. And so I'm going to ask you, as I said, to do a couple of tasks, and I will also ask you to laugh at my jokes, right? Any moment you see this, I would like you to react by pressing the smile, emoticon, right? So that's what you do, right? Every time you see this, you can, react on the screen. So let's try that now. Okay. Of course, you can also laugh at my jokes anytime you feel like laughing. No problem. So I'm not going to restrain anyone. All right. So in this session, well, the first task for you today is usually I ask my participants to type in the name of the town or city where they come from, but today we'll do something different. As some of you have already typed the places where you come from, I would like you to type the name of the room that you're in at the moment. So is it your kitchen, living room, bedroom, bathroom? Okay, and the place that you're sitting on or sitting at. Okay, so can you please type something like classroom / chair, living room, floor, etc. Okay. Right. So as you can see, we're like in a variety of places, and now we can only imagine like, 500 people sitting at different places, at different homes, different parts of the rooms, different types of furniture, etc. Okay, so we're all here to talk about new beginnings. So in this session, I'm going to give you like a lot of ideas on how you can begin the school year, and we'll talk about the pre-course book moment, getting back from online reality to classroom reality. We'll talk about beginning the school year, and we'll also mention beginning every unit, like beginning a new topic, beginning a new subject. All right. So it's all about new beginnings. All right. So now things are getting serious. Now the first real task for you is to finish this sentence. If you think about a teacher's life, the teacher's work, what do you think this can be compared to? I'm looking forward to seeing your ideas, in the chat box. It's the zoo. It's a sea. All right. Ocean, weather, fast train. Yeah, I think as you take a look at these, all of these, like, bring, certain pictures. Yeah. So stage, football, yeah, there's an element of game, etc. So when I thought about the teacher's job, I thought about jigsaw puzzles. I'm not a big fan of jigsaw puzzles, but to me, the teacher's job is similar to trying to put together like a 10,000-piece jigsaw puzzle of a night sky reflected in water. Okay, and very often, all of this is like upside down. So what we're doing is like we're dealing with a lot of different pieces, the students, okay, that we have to put together to compose like, one picture that's called like, the classroom and the meaningful composed of so many elements. And I think this may be a bit challenging. But I guess when we teach teenagers, we do realize that they have some things in common. All of us are unique. We have some unique features such as, fingerprints, the tone of our voice is unique, and we have different interests and hobbies and so on. But, we are similar to some extent. So I have another task for you, because as I said, it's an interactive webinar, and I would like you to think carefully. So tell me the name of the first student who comes to your mind when you think about getting back to work. Okay, type in the name quickly. The very first one, first instinct, okay? Okay, so let's think about Lisa and Dennis, right? You think about Lisa and Dennis, and you think about why Lisa and Dennis learn English, all right? So you think about their main motivation. Now I have a multiple choice question for you. Don't answer it just yet. Don't answer it. What is, Lisa's or Artem's or Dennis's main goal in learning English? Is it A, to gain theoretical knowledge of the English grammatical system, like, they love grammar just as much as you do? Okay, or is it to communicate effectively in relevant contexts? Yes. All right, thank you very much, right? Thank you very much for this, because, I hoped you would pick B. I don't know what I would do if you had picked, something else, but, their main goal is, I think, to communicate effectively, because English is, is a living language. It's not Latin, okay? So, they want to communicate. Of course, they want to pass exams, like, FIRST or IELTS, etc. But, they want to communicate. And at the same time, they are unwilling to communicate sometimes. I don't know whether you notice that paradox of speaking is that, they always want to speak, but when you ask them a question, they don't really feel like speaking, right? So speaking is the most desired skill, but at the same time, it's the one that they very often shy away from. Now, when a student is unwilling to speak, why is it so? Can you please type in some of these ideas? Yeah, I can see you're more active than, I can manage. So lack of motivation, fear, being shy, making mistakes, etc. All right, tired. True. Yeah. So what we're going to look at is how we can make them more communicative and how we can build like the relationships, for the new beginnings. I don't know whether you're familiar with the willingness to communicate model, but what I see that very often teachers believe that when a student is unwilling to communicate, it's somewhere at the top of the pyramid. So it's, the communication behavior, like they don't have the vocabulary or the grammar. But the problem is, much deeper, because now I'd like you to imagine yourselves speaking Ukrainian. You've got superb Ukrainian speaking skills. Do you sometimes feel like not speaking to someone, even though you've got all the resources? Of course, because there are many other, issues, connected with willingness to communicate. So sometimes, if you take a look at layer 3, and you try to imagine Dennis and Lisa, right? Your typical students, they may want to communicate, but for example, not with this one specific person today. Or they don't have the necessary communicative competence or communicative self-confidence regarding this particular subject. For example, if you ask Dennis to talk about computers, he will be fine. But if you ask him to talk about ecological problems, he won't be that fine, right? Or there might be something like intergroup motivation. For example, the same student might not be willing to communicate in the typical class, but when you've got the English club in the afternoon, he will be more willing to communicate. And there are all those like intergroup attitudes, sometimes, some boys will not speak when there are other boys in the class, etc., etc. Sometimes it's a matter of personality. So as you can see, it goes very, very deep, right? And what we're going to do today is try to look a bit deeper, okay? Because the willingness to communicate stems from a lot of different factors, and we're going to try and look at more than just the tip of the proverbial iceberg. So my session is divided into three parts. It's called Before You Begin, When You Begin, and After You Begin. So not super creative, but then again, the point is not creativity, the point is efficiency. And I hope that by this class, you will have like plenty of ideas for building up your students' willingness to communicate, building relationships, and a lot of ideas for the new beginnings. So let's start with what you can do before you begin. I realize that most of us have been in the online teaching reality for quite some time, right? Perhaps with a little break, like a couple of weeks, in the last weeks of June or something. So what you may do is create a sense of expectation, for the first real classes, right? And if we ever have to go back to online teaching and then getting back to classroom teaching, you can use those ideas once again, right? So this is something I've planned to do with my students at the end of the previous school year. So if you're in touch with them, like, via Messenger, email, etc., this is what we are going to do in the first lessons in September and October. So the things we have missed in our online classes, like a view, in the school, maybe a sound, maybe that noise, you suffered from, when you were at school, won't be that annoying anymore. Or maybe the smell of the school canteen is not that, annoying anymore. Maybe a game you played with your friends, a person with non-teaching stuff that you miss. Like, for example, we have this cleaner in our school, Miss Genia, and, we all look forward to seeing her again. Even though she will tell you, like, not to walk after the floor has been cleaned. So can you think of a person from a non-teaching staff that you miss and that you look forward to meeting again? Can you type in the name of this person and the function of this person? So is it like a secretary, an office worker, maybe the cleaner, maybe a security guard? Is there a person like this in your school? Yeah. Okay, so this is, of course, this is done in English, but what we're trying to do is we're trying to show that we are part of a larger group. And if you remember, willingness to communicate stems from the intergroup climate. So if we form a group, an effective group, then we realize that we have much more in common than we thought. Okay. Another thing is like bingo, cries of students. Great. When you think about the things that always happen in your class, I think you can ask your students to describe a typical lesson. And this is my students' bingo about my classes. Okay, so what I asked them to do is prepare like a list of the different types of behavior or the different things that always happen in our class. So I always sit on the desk, not at the desk, on the desk. I always open the window when my students tell me to close it, so I open this again, etc. I use different colors of highlighters. I always begin a class by saying like, how's life, etc. So I asked my students at the end of the last school year to write me a list of the things that always happen, and this is something that we do. And of course, we write the whole bingo either in the online version or the Blackboard, and you can try this with your group as well. And this, by the way, shows you how predictable, unpredictable, our lessons are, and you get some kind of feedback without explicitly asking for that. So you put the bingo, on the board, and then they copy that, and you say that they can pick like 4 or 5 different things, and shout bingo when all these 5 activities have been completed. So it's not the usual bingo connected with words or sounds, etc. But I think this one builds the intergroup climate, and then as a follow-up, your students can write like a short line or a short paragraph on how accurate they were. So can you please type in one typical example of your own behavior in class, of something that you do, something that is quite unique and something that will happen in every class, except for like checking attendance and giving homework, etc. Right? So something a bit less predictable. Can you give me an idea of something that you always do, like play some music in the background, maybe? Okay, so you see that at this point we are not formally learning English yet, but we're building this class atmosphere that may result in their increased willingness to communicate. Yeah, okay. Yeah, our favorite catchphrases, like you should have listened, practice makes perfect, etc. Looking out of the window, exactly. Great. Okay, then next thing we can do is when you work with your students, like, for the first time, what I have done when we returned for the first couple of weeks in June, it was I posted those, yellow Post-it notes with one word under, every student's chair. Some of them were empty. And the idea was that they had to reach for, the yellow Post-it note and then get together and, create the sentences, right? Now, can you type in those 2 sentences that I mixed up on the board? So that's a bit of a longer task for the fast typists. What's the first sentence? Yeah, I'm really happy that we're back together in the classroom, or we're back in the classroom together. And of course, the second one is, to tell the truth. I thought there would be moments when we didn't come back to class, right? So once again, the idea is that even if you teach more students that, than you've got the cards for, then you may leave some of the chairs empty. But the idea is, once again, to try and create some kind of sense of expectation, for the first class. Now, sometimes you don't have to, like, you may use this idea all throughout the school year as well, and then you can simply use the questions that will appear later in the class, right? So what I do is, when I work with the course book, is, I take the questions from, the post reading or the post listening exercise, and I sometimes put them under the chairs or on the desk on the yellow Post-it notes, word by word. Then I ask my students to get together and to make up those questions, and I say that, okay, now think about them, but we are going to come back to them together. Okay, so the idea is to try to create a sense of expectation for the class. I don't know whether you've ever tried this, okay, but if you haven't, I hope you try, and I hope that it works for you. Okay. Now, beginning a lesson with any course book or beginning a course might be a bit difficult. So we're going to move on to when you begin, right? So does it ever happen to you that your students are not as enthusiastic about a certain subject as you are? Like, you want to discuss literature, and they are not quite happy to do that. Okay, or you want to discuss, crime and punishment, and they're not quite, willing to do that, right? So I guess we do have, like, different likes and dislikes. And this is something I would like you to do with your students, but I'm going to try this with you today twice. We're going to take a look at a list of subjects, and I would like you to type in, well, to do a survey, okay, on the internet, and I'm going to display the results. So can you please click on that link and rate all those different topics on a scale from 1 to 5, where 1 is very unattractive, 5 is very attractive, the way you see them, how much you like talking about them, okay? So I'm going to give you a minute. There are 8 to 10 topics, and I would like you to do the survey quickly, and I'm going to show you the results, okay? Okay, just 15 more seconds. Okay, now I'm going to share my screen and show you the results. And you're going to see, the results of a survey that's called Topic Attractiveness, Teacher Edition. So a typical teacher in Ukraine finds, the following topics, uh, well, attractive, less attractive, etc. Okay? Okay, I hope you can see them. Okay, so we're taking a look at family life, quite attractive. Crime and punishment, not that attractive. Health, again, quite attractive. Technology is quite all right. Environment, a bit less, but still, yeah. Work, we like talking about work. Okay, relationships. So definitely, as you can see, very polarized effect. All right. Okay, so I get like mixed signals in the chat box that it's either no connection or I'm back on. Okay, so I don't know what we can do. Inna, can you please let me know if I can continue? All right. So now I'm not going to show you the results of this one, but I would like you to try and do that. Now I would like you to imagine a typical student of yours. So if you remember, just before the break, we spoke about the attractiveness of the subjects. Now, can you quickly take a look at this survey and now try and complete this survey as if you were one of your typical students, right? So do you think a typical student of yours would enjoy these subjects? I'm not going to show you the results. I'm going to describe them when I get the first couple of answers. Okay, so imagine a typical teenager, Lisa or Dennis, and then think about their responses. Okay, and we'll see whether we think they would be any similar to yours. Okay, so remember that typical teachers were quite keen to talk about family life. Typical students are not that keen. Okay, we were quite willing to talk about health. Our students are not that willing to talk about health. They're very willing to talk about technology. I guess that's no surprise. Not willing to talk about the environment, and so on and so forth, right? So, surprise, surprise, they are not that keen to talk about books either. Okay, so now the point of this is that I try and do a little Google survey with my students at the beginning of every year first, just to see where we are, and we discuss the reasons, because this creates an educational opportunity as well. So I would really like to encourage you. Making Google Forms is very easy, but this creates a sense of expectation. Even if you know that the subject is not very easy, you can discuss that with your students and try and think about what you can do. Now, let's imagine the least interesting subject, for our students. So let me take a look at the survey. It's work and health. Work because they haven't experienced, much of this, and work and health probably because they don't care about the problems as much as as we might. So what I like to do at the beginning of every lesson is give them questions for self-reflection. Okay, now one of the most boring subjects for my students is the environment. So what I do at the beginning of the class is before I begin anything, I tell my students, now let's try and be quiet. I might play some soft music in the background, and I say, now let's think about a few questions. I would like you to think about them in your mind, in your head. Don't answer them. The important thing is don't answer them at all, right? So we say, I read them slowly, give them 20 seconds to think about the problem, then read another one, give them 10 seconds to think about it, and so on. And we'll just proceed with the lesson. And we come back to these later on, right? So has it ever happened to you that you ask your students a question and they respond with something like, I don't know, I've never thought about it before? Does it ever happen to you that they say, I have no idea, I don't think about it, I haven't thought about it? Yeah? Yeah? Exactly, because I think sometimes, we only, somebody wrote that it even happens, to us teachers. Because I think sometimes we only know things because we are English teachers. And I think we find ourselves, ready to talk about various subjects because we have discussed them, in our classes, right? So, once again, when you try this silent self-reflection at the beginning, you don't elicit any answers at this point. But then, when you come back to them about 20 or 30 minutes later, your students can tell you that, it's the first time I've seen this question because it's not the first time, right? Okay, so the idea is that they will have already generated, some thoughts, they will have thought about it, and, they might have more to say than they would without this, right? So I would like you to now think about another fascinating subject for teenagers, culture and art. Can you think about, and can you please write down an example of a question that you could use for the silent reflection in a lesson on culture and art? What question could you ask at the beginning of the class? Okay, connected with this topic. So I'm going to give you half a minute to write down one example of a question. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you see that, we can generate a lot of these. But I'm going to tell you something that I quite like about working with the Gateway series is that, it's got like a number of thought-provoking questions in like all throughout the course. So sometimes when you have like no idea for these questions, or sometimes when you're busy and you teach like, a number of classes and you haven't come up with, the self-reflection questions, once again, the idea is you may use any of the follow-up exercises that you always do at the end of a reading or listening activity. Because I think it's quite a strong feature of this course is that, it has got speaking like scattered everywhere. Of course, it has got like a separate speaking class, but I believe, and I hope you will agree that, a modern language course, if you want to prepare your students for communicating effectively, it can't have just one speaking class in 10 lessons in the unit. So speaking is like, scattered in the different listening, reading sections, etc., etc. And this is something that I strongly believe that almost every English class should begin with and should end with a speaking activity. I hope you will agree that, when you're a teenager, you don't really want to study grammar unless you see the point that, it has for speaking, right? So as I said, you may use the questions from the last activity at the beginning of the class, but once again, the most important thing is tell your students not to answer these questions at this moment, right? So you will find, the answers later. And I think it's much easier to answer such questions, when you have dealt with, them at the beginning, all right? Or you could use all these questions that you have typed in the chat box, at the beginning of the unit. And especially if you have done, the Google survey and you have noticed together with your students that, it's a challenging lesson, you could tell your students, okay, so we're dealing with the topic of ecology for the next couple of weeks. So let's try and put something in the piggy bank. Everyone has to write down one specific question about the subject of, ecology, crime and punishment, family life, etc. Okay. Now, how many students are there usually in your class? Can you please type in the number quickly? Like, 12, yeah. So, it seems like, between 12 to 20. So you imagine having something like a bank of 12 to 20 student-generated questions, right? Once again, most of the work, all of the work is done by your students. If you see any of the questions that are repeated, you can ask your students to prepare some new ones. But you prepare the whole list, compile the list, and you've got like ready-made material for conversation, together with your students, right? Now, one more thing is that I believe that we have to be quite honest with our students. So, for example, if I don't like ecology and I don't really care about talking about ecology, I can just talk about my own reflection on the subject. So, for example, I tell my students how much I care about ecology, whether I sort rubbish, whether I put this in a separate, garbage bin, etc. So I start with my own reflection, then to lead them, to find like, some kind of relevant context in their own life, right? So, for example, if I believe that modern art is not art, I might express my ideas because, sometimes I think our students may think that we have like high, we think that everything is super important, right? If I don't like a particular type of entertainment, I might say that, and then, ask my students to try and debate with me, try to argue with me, etc., right? So it's like try to show the place, of the specific topic in your life to lead your students onto their own reflection. And then once again, I think when we did the survey on how attractive do you find the topic of, crime and punishment, what I like to do with my students is to have a post-unit reflection. And I say, okay, now let's try and evaluate this subject again. Like, let's think about crime and punishment or the environment or something like this again. Let's think about how attractive it is now. And I hope you will see that when you try this for yourself, that they usually find the topics slightly more attractive, right? And this is, I think, the whole point. It's like we enable our students to talk about different things, different subjects. Of course, I'm going to be honest with you. The idea is not that, the attractiveness of crime and punishment will rise from 3 to 5. But if it rises, for example, from 2 to 3.5, I think it's quite a big change, right? And then next year, when they think about the less attractive subjects, they might think about, the surveys, and they might think that, maybe the topic isn't that uninteresting when you try and, get engaged in it, right? Okay, so this is like these were the ideas for the beginning of a unit or the beginning of the school year. So you might try to do like, a survey like this with all your subjects. But, this quiet self-reflection is always a good idea for the beginning of every class, okay? Now, the power of an extra question. You see these 5 questions that are quite stimulating. But there might be a little bit of a problem with questions such as 2, 3, 4, and 5. Can you please take a look at them and tell me what you think every teacher would have to be ready for in case of questions like 2, 3, 4, and 5? Yeah, word order for questions, but I think we also, exactly, it's yes, no answers. So do you ever get this idea, from your students when you ask them a yes, no question, they say yes or no and it's over? Or sometimes they say something like, it depends, okay, and it's over. And I think that we have to try and predict like the next move, right? We've been teaching for quite some time. We know that they will probably say something like yes or no. So what I like to do with my students is prepare them for the different scenarios, okay? So again, it's over to you. I would like you to take a look at question 2. Do you think you're an independent learner? Can you think of the next question you can ask if the student says no? When a student says, I'm not an independent learner, I don't think I'm an independent learner, what could be the next question? Can you please type in the full question in the chat box? Yeah. This could be, why do you think so? Explain your choice. Is there anything you could do? Could you explain your answer? What do you have to do? Exactly. Beautiful. But now you see that we always make the effort of trying to come up with those questions ourselves. And I think it would be a good idea to ask Dennis and Lisa to come up with those questions. So what you may do with these yes-no questions is tell your students, now, you're going to talk to a partner in a moment, but you have to predict their next move. It's like playing chess. You try to predict, the next move, right? So I would like you to write down the next question for both scenarios. If the answer is yes, if the answer is no, you have to write down the next question, right? So this way you engage your students in planning their conversation, and you make your students responsible for keeping up the conversation, right? We usually rush to do it ourselves. We flood them with questions like, why do you think so? Would you like to be independent? Do you think independent is, a desirable feature, etc.? We don't need to do that. We may slow down, and even before you begin the activity, after you've checked, if the questions are correct, these 5, you can move on to now. Think about the English conversation as, playing chess. Think about the next move. Think about, planning what your partner is going to say. Okay? So this may develop their skills and their willingness to communicate by, preparing for a difficult speaking partner. Okay? Now, how old are your students when they reach level B1? Can you please type in the age, please? Okay, a typical student at the B1 level, so 15. And I think you will also agree, so thank you very much. You may stop typing. I think you will also agree that even at the age of 15, your students have got, their favorite students, right? That they always sit with, the ones that they always want to talk to. And if you ask them to sit with somebody else, they almost start crying as if they were 7 or 8 years old again, right? So you remember that sometimes we are not willing to communicate because of the intergroup climate, we just don't know the students. And it has happened to my students that, they finished a course without knowing each other's names. So I've tried to take care of that. And now I just tell them that they have this copy of a list, with everyone's name on the left. And throughout the couple of lessons from one unit, they have to speak to everyone in the group at least once. Of course, they will speak to some students more often than others, but the idea is that by the end of a unit or by the end of the month, you decide how you want to do it. By the end of a certain period, your students will have to have worked with everyone in the group at least once and write down a little survey, on or I mean, not a survey, a bit of of information about what they have learned in this one specific lesson, talking to this one specific student. Okay, so this way, once again, when you kind of gently force them to work with everyone, you build the intergroup climate, which builds the willingness to communicate. Okay, so as I said, we try to go a bit deeper, or when you think that, you ask your students how predictable they think they are, or how predictable other classmates are. And this is something that I like to do as well when we discuss a controversial subject. And with teenagers, anything may be controversial. I tell them something like, now look around class and, decide if there's someone who has an opposite point of view to yours, and then go and talk to this person and decide if you are right. Or on a different day, you might want to change this and say, find someone with the same point of view and check if you were right. And then, of course, at the end of the activity, you ask them to report if they were right or wrong, if they were partly right, partly wrong, how right, how wrong they were, etc. So once again, you create, an opportunity for communication that always starts with a reason, right? Like start with the reason, like I want to find out how accurate I was, in my predictions. Okay. And now we said that there were some less relevant topics to our students that we try to make more relevant. Now let's think about a very relevant topic. What is the goal of education in general? Now, sometimes we think it's like, learning specific structures, or it's learning, some vocabulary. Well, this is true. I think there might be like, more important goals, right? And I think the goal of education, not just language education, might be to learn how to control your emotions, how to speak in public. Lots of people are afraid of that. And yet lots of people would like to master the art. I think we have to learn somewhere, like, how to solve our relationship problems, how to enjoy literature, etc., right? And I hope you all agree that, the goal of education, is somehow bigger than just learning chunks of information, right? I hope you will also agree that English teachers are kind of superior, to other teachers because we teach everything. When a physics teacher has a lesson, it's about physics. It's if it's a biology teacher, it's usually a biology lesson, right? If it's an English lesson, this may be a lesson on art, a lesson on relationships, a lesson on how to stay safe on the internet, etc. So there's quite a lot of things to do, right? And now, this is something I would like you to think about before we do the last activity. Can you think about something that you have learned in your English classes as a teacher or as a student, but this can't be connected with the English language itself? When I did this survey on my social media a few days ago, I got some responses, and one of my students said, I have learned that my 12-year-old students are better cooks than me, because they had shown her the photographs of what they had cooked, and she said that she was quite miserable compared to them. So we learn different facts, different things, etc. Can you please type in something that you have learned from your students, or from your own education? So how to cooperate with other people. Lots of computer words. Yes. Like I don't know these words in Polish, right? And they tell me like, it's kind of obvious, right? Yeah. How to deal with technology. Yeah. How to use different computer programs, right? So yeah, communication, making videos, how to use Photoshop. Exactly, right? So we benefit from this process as well. And that's why I think the way I see education now, I think the most important, the most relevant parts of the course would be what we call the life skills lessons. And I know that we are busy with the syllabus, right? We have to teach like a certain amount of grammar, have to teach a certain amount of vocabulary, etc. But then in the end, after about 10 years of education, 20 years, after you finish school, very few people visit their old teachers and say something like, I still remember this, this passive voice lesson that you had, it was amazing, right? They don't say that, right? But they will always come back and say something like, I remember how I learned something about friendships. I remember, something I learned about, how I can be, a better kid. Maybe I learned something about, myself, etc. So this is, I think, the strongest feature of the course to me. Like when I have worked with this book, when I took a look at this book, I found that, we have to devote a lot of time to teaching life skills because in the end, these will be more important than, with all respect, than all the grammar and vocabulary that we teach. They're going to be the most memorable classes that we have. They're going to be the most emotionally engaging, topics that we will ever touch upon, right? So if you sometimes worry about seeing the results, like, I have taught my students about politeness or about relationships, and I can't see the results, please don't worry. Psychologists say that whatever we teach our children, whatever we teach our students, is, will become their own values around the age of 30. So you have to hope now that your students, benefit from your classes, and they come back in about 15 years and they will say thank you for everything you have taught them. But once again, when you take a look at your students' willingness to communicate, I think you have to go a bit deeper. And when they are not willing to communicate, it isn't always because they don't have the vocabulary or the grammar, but there might be other reasons. And I hope that you have found some ideas, in my webinar today that that will help you create a better classroom environment and more effective course, like using the course book. But even before you start using the course book, you may be equipped, to deal with all these challenges. Now, the next speaker is the best friend of mine, and I hope you enjoy his talk as well. And if you want to leave us some feedback on our sessions today, you can find us on Facebook, and the post showing us getting prepared, for this class is already there. So find us on Facebook and tell us what you think. Thank you very much for being so active, so engaged in this session, and I hope I can wish you all the best, for your new school year, whatever form it takes. Hello, Jacek.
Hello, I'm here.
Okay, so that's the moment where you say hello and I say goodbye, or
You say goodbye and I say hello.
I say hello. Yeah. Okay, bye.
So, am I supposed to start right away? Asking the organizers. So, hello, anybody? Okay, so I'll just disappear for a second because I need to close the window, which I have forgotten to do. I'll be back in a moment. Hello, everyone. Oh, nice to see you. Nice to see you. I've missed you. Like a whole holiday without anybody to talk to, anybody to share my knowledge with, my experience, my happiness to be a teacher. And you know what? I have to tell you that hello. The thing I have to tell you is, and I don't know if you get this feeling, but over the holidays I don't use a lot of English. Basically, I just watch films online, but I don't talk. I don't speak English a lot. Have you got this as well? It's like that you don't communicate with people a lot in English. So many wonderful places. You can talk to me. You can write. So in the chat window. So do you ever get this feeling that you don't use English a lot? During the holidays, and just basically, bottled vegetables. That sounds nice. So the thing is that, that the first time I'm supposed to speak English for a bit longer, I just sit there and think like, do I still remember how to speak? Do I still remember the language? And I'm, believe it or not, I'm really, really nervous about the first time I have to speak English for a bit longer. I hope I haven't forgotten much. I hope I still remember enough, to communicate to you and to have like this lovely time with you and to talk to you about the things that I have prepared. So, I started, the title of my today's presentation is Involve Me and I Learn. And this is part of a saying which was first was said by a guy named Benjamin Franklin. We've got him here, and he actually said more than just that. He said, tell me and I something, and teach me and I and involve me and I. Okay, so we have a few things, and now this is the first thing. I'd like to involve you from the very beginning. So tell me and I forget. Yes, lovely. Thank you very much. So this is the beginning. Okay, tell me and I forget. So what about teach me and I? What's next? What happens next? Any ideas? Teach me and I answer. Okay, that's a good one. That's for our schools. Teach me and I remember and I use it. Okay, involve me and I. What about this? Involve me and I learn. Yes, lovely. This is what the beginning. This is what the title is. Yes. So tell me and I forget. Teach me and I remember. Involve me and I learn. So if it's all about involving, let's start with getting involved. So I will try and get you involved. And you know what? Because this is such a wonderful adage, this saying, what Franklin said. I'll ask you a few questions. So how many verbs are there in this adage? You've just learned. We've just said that. We looked at this. So can you please write the number of verbs in tell me and I blah blah blah. How many verbs? I'm waiting. Ooh, you're quick. Good. Lots of sixes. I don't know about you, but in my country, 6 is the top mark. So if this is the same for you, you already got your sixes, before the beginning of the school year. Lovely. So yeah, you're absolutely right. It is 6. Now, I have one more, even more. Who am I kidding? I have another thing to ask you. What are the verbs in this, but in alphabetical order? Can you please write them down? So as quickly as possible, because we work with teenagers. Teenagers don't like to wait. Teenagers want us to be quick. So, how many? Okay, alphabetical order. Okay, waiting for people to write all the 6 words in the alphabetical order. Forget is the first one, but what about the rest of them? Forget, involve, learn, remember, teach, and tell. And Katarzyna is the winner. Okay. Yes. So let's take a look. If I have the same key. Yes. Forget, involve, learn, remember, teach, and tell. So forget like tell me and I forget. Yes. Teach me and I remember. Involve me and I learn. Right. This is how it works. All right. One more puzzle for you. One more way of trying to get you involved in my presentation. So here we go. How many words are there here? Because this is the same adage, but this time, as one kind of sign. Please just very quickly count how many words there are here. Okay, you can see one, but if you divide it into 15, 6 verbs, 8. Well, and the correct answer is 15. Absolutely. Yes, you were right. Okay. So tell me and I forget, teach me and I remember, involve me and I learn. So basically, this is what I would like to talk about today, about us teachers involving our students and making them remember something, not by telling them you have to learn it. Maybe through teaching, which this helps them remember, but generally through involving them, through making them do something. Just like I've just started with you, I asked you to count the verbs. I asked you to remember what the verbs are, whether you remember which verbs go together, tell me and forget. Because I've got a point, I have to tell you, there's a little secret. I have a little bit of a point in this, and I would like to show you that at the very, very end. Okay, so this is the beginning. This is like the introduction, but obviously, always we need to have some. Well, she's a referee, and a very serious one. And all referees have. What do they have? They have rules, and we also have rules for today's presentation. Those of you who have seen me before, and is there anybody here who has seen me here? If you could just like put a smiley in the chat window if you have seen me talking. So those of you who have seen me before, oh yes, hello, Macmillan and Katarzyna. Oh, Katarzyna has seen me a lot, it seems. Okay, so you have seen me before, right? Lovely. So you know that I have 2 basic rules. The first one is be active. So you are active. You're great. You're wonderful. We interact. I feel as if we are in the same room, almost, and I miss it. I really miss it. And react to jokes, please. I desperately need that. So whenever I make a joke, you think I make a joke, please laugh. I will appreciate anything. I'll take it. I haven't been to any class. I haven't been in my class for like so long that I really miss it. I really miss my students' interaction, laughing people. Okay, so let's get to the point. We have this big question at the very beginning, because I told you, involve me and I learn. This is very easy to say. It's, involve your students, do it. But, sometimes they don't want to get involved. And, there are days and there are situations which we have to understand that, are connected with the fact that, well, maybe this is a bad day for our students. So there are those things, those aspects we can't change, and we can't do anything about that. But there are some reasons which we have to be aware of. And once we get aware of these reasons, it's much easier for us to, in a way, to react or to prepare, or even sometimes, do something before those reasons take place. So let's take a look. And what are the reasons why students don't get involved? I'm not going to ask you because I suppose, we all have lots of different reasons. And, there are really lots of them. But, there are 3 or 4 I'd like to mention at the very beginning. One of the things is that, unfortunately, our students sometimes don't think that the class offers them something useful. And it's not because you're a bad teacher or I'm a bad teacher, because we're not. We're good teachers. But the thing is that, these are teenagers. These are like 13, 14-year-olds. They don't think about the future. They don't think about, they don't have this kind of self-reflection, which I know that Czesław talked about, but in a different context. But, but they basically just like, well, okay, I have to be there. My parents sent me, it's the law, I have to go to school. So, and they don't think that the class offers them something useful, okay? Which is not true, because, we can offer our students a lot in our classes, knowledge, which is great, but we can also offer them fun. We can also offer them relationships. We can offer them lots of other things. So, this is the first thing, they don't think that, what we teachers have to offer, and we do have to offer something. We offer them something, is very useful. They don't find it important. Yes, absolutely. I agree with that. Our system of education teaches students to be passive recipients. And that's, something which is true for Poland. I don't know about your country, but I suppose it might be the same. That, the way I was taught, and, I've seen this a lot in different classes, that, students are supposed to sit down and listen. And we're supposed to be like, the ones who send knowledge to them, and they are supposed to, well, we talk, and you know what happens when you talk. Tell me, and I forget. So we talk to them and they forget, so, and this is how this system works. And, some people say, well, so what, should I change the system? Yes, do change the system. Be a different teacher, involve your students so that they learn, get them into your classes, make them part of your class, and, some people say, yeah, am I supposed to be a revolutionary? No, you don't have to be a revolutionary person. Do it for yourself, because when they get involved, they start learning. When they get involved, they start having fun. And, if they have fun and you have fun, basically, this is a great time. It's not really working anymore. We just get paid for having fun. Wonderful. It's a great thing. Now, they don't believe that they have something valuable to share or offer. This is another thing. I know lots of Polish students that when you ask them, what do you think about this? And say, I don't know. Like, what's your opinion? I don't have an opinion. My opinion is not important. Or, things like, I sometimes ask my students at the beginning of the course, have you got any kind of unusual hobby? No, I don't have any hobby. Then you ask them a few things, and it turns out that they play medieval guitar. And say, it's not special. No, why would that be? No, it is special. I remember a girl who said, I collect anthems, but it's nothing special. I say, what? How do you collect anthems? Well, I get the recordings, I get the lyrics, I learn the recordings, and I learn the lyrics, I learn to sing them. I mean, it's a wonderful thing, but she didn't think it was special, right? So our students don't really believe that they have something to share, and this is another thing we have to go over, we have to show them. I mean, I loved what Czesław said at the very end of the presentation, showing, how we learn from our students, showing how much, how much they offer us, and basically this is one of the things. It's not only we take it from them, but we can also tell them, what, thank you, because I've learned something from you. I agree with this generation gap, absolutely, but but doesn't mean we can't learn from each other. It's actually even better. I learn from my sons, who are obviously younger than me. I learn a lot. They laugh at me when I learn from them, but still, I learn words. Sometimes I get called boomer, because I don't understand something, or I make a joke and I go like, oh my God, but come on, I'm a dad. I have the right to make those dad jokes. So yeah, of course. But, yes, our students have something valuable to share. And finally, one of the reasons why students don't get involved is that the relationship between the teacher and the student is not close or good enough to promote interaction and involvement. Because if you believe that the other person will listen to you and they will learn something from you, and this is, maybe they are older, but still this is like a person you have a relationship with. It doesn't have to be very close friendship, but some kind of relationship. If you believe that, you will talk to this person. But if you treat your teacher as this kind of, educational prop, somebody standing in front, of the board that will basically just talk and be boring, you will never feel like sharing anything with this person. Okay, so these are some of the reasons why our students don't get very involved in their classes. And today, I'd like to show you how to get on this road, just to get rid of at least a few of those problems, to the side. And I hope we're going really to have lots of fun. Sorry, just like looking at my cheat sheet, with my notes, because it's good to have notes, by the way. Every teacher should have notes, I suppose. Okay, so I will talk about 3 things today. I will share basically 3 ideas for the beginning of a new course. I know that you're going to start your classes very soon. You haven't started yet, have you? It's like, yes, you have. No, you haven't. No. Okay, so it's coming. So basically, this is the beginning of a new year. For me, it's a little bit scary because it's coming back to classes, to classrooms with my students. It's not about getting the virus because I understand this may happen. I've taken the vaccination, so I'm not really afraid of that. But this building new relationships, going back somewhere new. So this is slightly kind of like scary, something new. So the course should start in a certain way, and I will share a few ideas, and these ideas are like connected with what I believe every teacher should do, and I actually do that in my classes at the beginning of a course. And there will be 3 points. There will be 3 main points. I will show them in a moment, but it's not like you have to do them one by one because they're kind of interwoven. They are interconnected. Those ideas, they're connected with each other. And I will show you some ideas, but you don't have to introduce all of them. Just pick the ones you really like with the students. So the first one is the beginning of a great adventure. And what that is, I'll tell you in a moment, because right now it's a secret. Well, every adventure has to be a secret. Okay, the next thing is like you have to show your students what they already know. Okay, and then the last point, when I get to this point, it means I'm kind of finishing. You have to let your students see what they can still learn, because we want to have a good relationship with our students. We want them to believe in themselves. Remember, they have something to offer. Show them what they really know, and we also want them, to be interested, because we want them to see that we still have something to offer to them. Okay, so the beginning of a great adventure. What do I mean by that? Well, I'll demonstrate that instead of explaining. Oh, I'll explain in a moment, but first I will demonstrate. Our meeting today is a bit of an adventure for me. I told you I was stressed before, but I wasn't really sure whether I still remember English. Maybe I've forgotten some words, maybe I've forgotten some grammar. So, this was like a bit of an adventure for me. I hope you can see how excited I am. So here is some of the stuff that will happen today. I could try and explain these things to you, but I'm not going to. I'll just let you take a look at these. If you were in my classroom, I'd probably ask you, why do you think I'm showing you those things? What do you think is going to happen? Obviously, as you can see, it is slightly provocative, with the toilet paper roll. But, well, the thing is, when you teach teenagers, you have to be slightly provocative from time to time. You have to enjoy whatever is happening. All the 4 pictures will be used in the presentation again. And I will talk about them in the context of creating a positive relationship with the students, beginning a course on a positive note once you get them. So this is what's going to happen. This is what you're going to see. I hope you can see what the adventure is going to be. Well, at least I can imagine some of your suggestions in your head. Maybe no, I shouldn't ask. Just keep them to yourselves, or share with the person sitting next to you. You know, even if it's somebody who's not watching this presentation, just tell them, you know, that right now the teacher is showing me, and I think this is what we're going to listen to. You can do that if you want to. Okay, so you know, when I begin my courses with my students, you know, I don't start with all those kind of pieces of information where you tell your students, you know, this is what you need to get a positive mark. This is how many points you need to collect. This is how many good marks. This is what you're going. This is how many tests you're going to write. Because, you know, I have been thinking about that, you know, that I love education. I think education is a wonderful adventure. I think education is a great book. And book, I was reading something. Yes, it is a book that we kind of open and read. And, you know, this is something we go through with our students. This is how I feel about that. And sometimes I wonder why young people whose brains are basically conditioned, are created to learn, you know, to absorb information from the world, why they get bored in classes. So then I kind of realized that, you know, when they come to my classes or any other classes, you know, some time ago, you know, the first thing that I say is like, hello, my name is Jacek Łagun, and I'll be your practical grammar teacher, let's say at university. And today and then this year, you're going to learn a lot of difficult grammar, and this is what you need to pass, you know. So with the very first class, in the very first class, at the very first moment, what I did was show and tell my students, I care about marks, I care about points. This is why you're here, you know. Instead of telling them, you know, we're going to have lots of fun, because you know what, I do have lots of fun with my students in my classes, you know. So it was actually, you know, when I started with this kind of like giving them my demands and everything, I actually, you know, lied to my students, because it wasn't me, you know. This is the real me in the classroom, you know, this slightly overexcited teacher, you know, who's like trying to explain things in a colorful way. Okay, and I don't want that, you know. So a few years ago, I decided to change that. So now I begin with the beginning of a great adventure. You know, I start my class with telling my students, this is what's going to happen. And not like, you know, difficult stuff, but, you know, exciting things, you know. And this is something which I suppose sets the tone, because your students walk into the classroom, especially new groups, and they don't know what to expect, you know. They don't know what to see. They don't know what kind of person you are, you know. And you tell them, you know what, hello, you know, I'm going to take you on a great adventure. You know, by the way, whatever examples I'm going to use from the books, I'm going to use them from book Get to 100, which I have co-authored. You know, it's like I contributed to the book, and this is why I like it so much. So the thing is, you know, I start with, you know, giving them a presentation, 9 slides, 5 slides, 10 slides, if you have an OHP, or just questions, or maybe photos for them to take a look at, you know, and discuss. So I'll give you some ideas of what you can do with your students, you know, apart from showing them a toilet paper roll, which, by the way, if you want to, fine, they will be really excited about that. Okay, so the first thing is, one of the things you can do is you can show them 2 different structures that they are going to learn, right? So so you ask them, okay, now let's take a look. When I got home last night, when I was getting home last night, in pairs, very quickly, even in your native language, if you want to, can you please compare these? Do you know what the difference is? You know, and it's a good idea, you know, to choose some stuff that they don't know, and I'll come back to it at the end. Again. So, you know, and you said, okay, you don't know that. Okay, give me some ideas. You think this, interesting, but no, close, but not really. You know what? We'll learn that. This is the beginning of the great adventure. You will know 2 weeks from now, a month from now, in Unit 3. You know it. You're the teacher. You've prepared the course. You know where this is in the book, right? So you tell the students, okay, fine. So this is what we're going to do. And you know, it's a good idea, again, especially if you can use this OHP or any other way of kind of presenting something visually. You can show the students that, you know, you see, this is something I've taken from an exercise, and you're going to do this exercise. And you know what? The interesting thing right now is you don't know the answer, but you will. And, you know, we'll get that together. We'll walk together, and I'll get you to the point, to this point, and you will learn this, okay? Because you'll be with me, and we'll be having fun, okay? So this is one thing you can try. Comparing to structures, you can have a few slides with different structures, you know, or you can have 2 words that you want to compare. The choice is yours. But the point is, you know, create some kind of expectation, you know, and don't start with marks, but the adventure. All right, what else can you do? Okay, you can use 3 interesting pieces of information. And again, these are pieces of information. These are facts you can learn from the book, from Get to 100, right? So you say a super recognizer will remember your face after. And again, ask your students. If they want to know who a super recognizer is, it's the opposite of the person who forgets faces very quickly. By the way, I don't know about you. I kind of remember faces when I have a problem with names. Do you remember all your students? The first day you meet them, like them? Do you? Yes? No? No. Okay. So I'll show you a trick that I used to help myself. But it's such a big problem. Okay, people who ever write yes, I envy you. My wife remembers everyone she meets, and I can't really remember people. It's not because I don't want to. It's just a big problem for me. And so this is me, and a super recognizer is the opposite of me. So they will remember your face after. What do you think? Any ideas? Would you like to type after? You're thinking what the correct answer is. And even if you don't give me the correct answer, even if you don't say that, after, 10 minutes, 5 seconds, seeing it only once, whatever, at least you're thinking about that. Remember the self-reflection that Czesław told you about? Basically, making people think, making people get ready, then giving them like this teaser, like, this is what's coming. After you smile at them, that's a good one, Yes, not with my smile, I was told I shouldn't smile at people because I have a terrible smile. See? I shouldn't smile at people. Okay. Or you have, in Scotland, you can get married if you're 16. True or false? What do you think? I'm waiting. I can see there is some slow internet. True, false, true, false. Why not? It might be slightly too early, but who knows? Okay. See, you don't know. But you will find it. The book says so. I'm not going to tell you because it should be unrevealed. Eton Mass is a very dirty room. Yes or no? True or false? It does sound like a very dirty room. I don't know if it's true. Well, I do know. Actually, I put this in an exercise. But if you want to know, you have to get the book and you have to check it in the book. You have to wait for that. Okay, so this is the idea. We're starting with getting involved. I don't know. It's okay not to know. See, Helen won. I like your answer because not knowing is also fine. We're here to learn. If somebody says I don't know, say good, but you will once we move on in the book. Okay, so you can also try something like this. Which is this word positive or negative, or is it neutral? Elderly, again, for lots of students like elderly, I don't know, maybe. Okay, you tell them, you will see. We'll have a class, we'll talk about people, we'll talk about ages, and then you will know whether elderly is positive, negative, or neutral. And if it's positive, is there a negative word? And is it positive, when somebody is like old? For a teenager, crazy. How can this be positive, a positive word? Which, by the way, it is. Okay. Another idea for this adventure quiz is, well, give your students an interesting, crazy, quirky, whatever fact about yourself. Okay, some of you wrote that you've already seen my presentations. You may have seen one in which I give 5 true sentences about myself, and one of them is that I slept at a cemetery, which is true. I did sleep at a cemetery, and yeah. Now, again, I usually, okay, again. A trick of a trade. Just a quick question. Tell me, do you have prepared? Do you have like those jokes which you use like every year with different groups, obviously? But let's say you explain a structure, and you have like this. I know always the same story for present continuous, or you have the same story for past continuous or whatever. Because I do. I have those jokes because, well, they work. They're always funny. So. Basically, I do have those stories. So, I know that at a certain point in the class, I will tell my students, yes, they do work, those stories. I will tell my students, something like, so this is how I explain this, I don't know, past tense, whatever. Okay, so I usually give my students this one little thing. I say, okay, well, maybe it's true, maybe it's false, you don't know, but you have to wait until somewhere in the middle of November, and we will come back to when I slept at a cemetery. Okay, I do that, and my students go like, okay, fine, and they, it's not true, you didn't. Well, I did sleep at a cemetery, but not at night. This is what I can tell you. One day when we have more time, and you ask me about that, I'll tell you the whole story. So once again, just to recap this adventure quiz, try to imagine walking into the classroom, maybe you do that, and instead of saying, hello, this year we're going to learn for the exam, they know that. This year we're going to have tests. They do know that. Just say, come on, people, this year we're going to have a great adventure. It's going to be, exciting at times, maybe boring at times, maybe scary at times, who knows? But it's going to be an adventure we're all going on, okay? And then you can give them those ideas, you can just start this way, and the very beginning, people say that there is no second chance to make a good first impression, don't waste it, okay? This is how you start, this is how important the relationship is, in Treswell's PhD, like my friend's PhD, he researched how the most important things in that create wonderful relationship with student and teacher. And one of the most important things is whether they like you and whether they think you're a human being that's worth listening to. And this is the way to begin it. This is the way to show them. But I also have a few other ideas, to kind of start this adventure, and have fun there. Okay, I hope you remember this one. So this was at the beginning of our adventure. I promised some circles, exciting circles, crop circles. Who knows what kind of circles they are? Definitely red circles. And they're not even circles, actually. But these are elliptic shapes of some kind. But the thing is, if you take a look at that, this is how I move on from the beginning of the great adventure. I tell my students, what, I don't know much about you. You don't know much about me. Just see a guy in front of you, and I would like you to know something about me, and I would like to know something about you. And I draw those 5 circles. I draw the 5 circles on the board, and I then fill them in with this. This is the actual information I leave on the board. Okay, so I leave those 5 different circles, and I tell my students, okay, now you have 5 minutes. You have 5 minutes to discuss how these are, in your opinion, connected with me. Because I'm egocentric. Well, you will see in a moment. But the thing is, students are interested, interested in you, and if you show them, okay, fine, I want to have a relationship. Let's just learn something about each other. And you give them this. So fine. So I give them that, and they kind of discuss it, and I say, what, it's fine. You can discuss it because I'm giving that to you. I usually sit slightly further from my students because I know that in the first class, if you sit too close, they kind of feel shy. They don't want to discuss that. I let them. The important thing is that whatever you put on the board, it should be something that you won't feel hurt if your students kind of misunderstand you or say something wrong. Okay, so these are the things. So I will ask you about, do you know anything, like any of these things? Would you be able, see, you're already trying to guess. You're already trying to guess. Lovely. I like that, Yulia. Right, that was great. So this is how it works. Well, yes, this is the date of birth, the 2nd of February. And I usually, my students say, like, your date of birth? Kikita, my wife's name. That would be lovely. It is connected with my wife, but this is not my wife's name. Okay, so they usually say, is it your birthday? And I say, no, obviously not, because if I give you my birthday, it's like I'm expecting some gifts from you. So that would be not okay. This is, a birthday, like somebody who's really important to me. And then they say, oh, so your children. And I say, children, yeah, I love them. And I say, no, but I love somebody more. And they say, oh, your wife. And I say, yes, this is my wife's birthday. And actually, it's a funny thing because my wife and my mom were born on the same day. I mean, different years, but the same day. Okay, so it's easy for me to remember both birthdays. I mean, and if I forget, I have 2 people who are angry with me. So this is how we start. And, obviously Slipknot is my favorite band. I really like very heavy music. Slipknot is not the heaviest music that I listen to. Kikita is the place where I met my wife, and Isa is my wife's name. Okay, so I gave that to you very, very quickly. But the thing is, pay attention to what I'm doing. First of all, no, Isa is like Isabella. Okay, Isabel. Kikita for the cat. That's lovely. So the thing is that, take a look at what I'm doing here. I tell my students about my hobby, about my passion. I tell them about a very important person in my life. Actually, I tell them about this person 3 times. It's her name, this is her birthday, and this is where I met her. I create a certain image. I create the image of a family guy, somebody who loves his wife, who remembers her birthday, who remembers where he met her, but at the same time, I listen to very heavy music, and so I basically kind of create some kind of image. You can do the same thing. Easier, maybe. Nothing about children. I have 2 sons in the rooms right now. They were told not to leave the rooms until I finish this presentation. So I create a certain image, and again, I'm telling them, this is me. I'm a human being. I have a wife. I have my hobbies. I have a life. I met my wife at some time. You can choose whatever you want to, right? You can choose some other pieces of information that are kind of important. But you know what? If you take a look, I always ask them, and what about this? And usually I love this, like, so what about the last circle? And my students look at the circle. There's nothing there, and they go like, he's probably crazy. He doesn't know what. There's nothing there. And I said, like, you know what? This is my favorite poet, because I don't have my favorite poet. I don't read a lot of poetry. I don't understand poetry. So this is my favorite poet. So I'm not that sophisticated and blah blah blah. So there are things I don't like. Okay, so this is how we begin. But then I tell my students, now you do the same things with each other. If it's a new group, imagine new students, in secondary school, some high school students, they walk in the classroom, they don't know each other. This is how you begin. And 5 minutes later, you have people who know something about each other, and they start becoming friends. We're creating a relationship. We're starting this great adventure, which is education, and we will get those students involved, because later on, when you start talking about the past continuous or the present simple or the future tenses, they will be there to listen to you, because you won't be just the teacher. You'll be, the guy who listens to Slipknot and, who loves his wife, and who's kind of funny a little bit from time to time. Okay. So this is how it works. One of the tricks. Another trick that I use, and this is something, for remembering names and for students to remember, it's like, you write your name, and then you have to write words that are kind of, that start with the same letter as the different letters from your name. And they have to describe you. Again, trying to talk about yourself, trying to introduce yourself a little bit with those letters. And, these are the words I use now to describe myself, because I am joyful. I really enjoy life, and I'm really a happy person. I am slightly absent-minded. I sometimes forget about things. I get lost. And people from Macmillan, Ukraine, they are so wonderful. They are so great. They are really patient with me. When I forget about the hour when I'm supposed to, to log in, they're always there to help me. So thank you, by the way, very, very much. Macmillan, Ukraine, you're wonderful. So this is what I am. I'm kind of like, okay, I'm cool. Just okay. Maybe this is slightly self-conceited, but I am cool. I am absolutely egocentric. I love talking about myself, if you haven't noticed yet. So that's the idea, right? So and I'm a bit cookie. I am a bit cookie. So this is, again, you talk about yourself, you introduce yourself. Students work with each other. They describe themselves to each other and then to you, and then it's much easier for you to remember the name. And again, it's not like, imagine this lesson where, like, it's been like 30 minutes of the class, you've been in, and those students, they're still kind of having fun. They're kind of learning names and saying, yeah, really, this is what you are. This is your hobby, because they can write about hobbies, whatever. The point is, we don't want to start with talking about the exam. It's there. It will wait for you students, and they will be stressed about that. And you know what? Just like, I've been laughing and joking a lot, but to tell you the truth, the stress connected with the exam is an incredibly awful thing. My youngest son took his final exams in May, and I could see how once he finished those exams, how he started coming back to life. For 3 months, he was kind of getting sadder and sadder and more depressed. Once Matura was over, this final exam, suddenly his life came back to him. So our students are worried. They are stressed about the exams. They do think and remember the exams. We don't need to do that. We don't need to remind them of the exams, again and again and again. They will learn, and we will have chances. We don't need the first class to do it. Okay. So these are the ideas for the first class. This is something you can do with the students. Now, one more idea. Remember that? Okay, I know you do. Okay, so that's a trick I learned from a friend of mine from like a town which is like 100 kilometers from Olsztyn, where I live. Okay, you come to the class with a toilet paper roll, and this must be the one that when you pull it, you tear off one square piece of paper. You don't tell the students what's going to happen. You just tell them, just take some, as many as you wish, So there will be people who will just take one. Some will go like, yeah, from you. Usually those crazy boys, like, yeah, I want a lot, and then they will just take a lot. Fine, let them do that. Then you ask them to tear these, into as many squares as there are, and then you tell them, and now you have to give the whole class as many pieces of information about yourself as squares you have torn off. So, in this case, it's a bit like a trick, and they will see, oh, so you're a prankster. This is what you want. You want to play with us. Yes, I love playing with my students. They sometimes play tricks on me. I play tricks on them. And this way, again, we'll have a student who will have just one. And these are going to be like those shy students who will say like, okay, my name is this, or I like this, or that, or whatever. And there will be those who'll have like a pile of paper, 17 different pieces of paper. Well, okay, so this is what. And this is like telling the ones who like going crazy and fooling around, telling them, people, I have something for you. You want to play? Fine. You want to go crazy? No problem. But remember, I'm there for you, and I'll be waiting, and we're going to have fun, and sometimes this fun means that you have to create lots of sentences. Okay. So once again, just to recap this part, I'd like to tell you, that it's a good idea to begin a new course as if you were beginning a new story with your students, a new adventure, something that's exciting, because it is exciting. It's just like some people, sometimes when I talk about this, like, isn't it a bit lying? It's like, just like students come to the class, it's going to be boring. It doesn't have to be boring. It depends on us what kind of education we're going to offer, what kind of classes we're going to have, how we're going to start them and how we're going to lead them, and I have to tell you that in like 90% of my classes, I am excited for my classes, for meeting my students, for spending time with people, being able to communicate, sharing ideas, learning something from them. So this is what we can show them. This is something that we have to offer. Now, another thing that, I told you that I believe we can do is like we maybe should show our students what they already know. Because, as I said, they sometimes know a lot and they don't realize that, or they don't believe it. They think like, no, I'm stupid. I can't really. Sometimes the best thing, the best moment that I really like is when a student, in beautiful, impeccable, proficient English, wonderful sentence tells me that they don't know any English at all, and I say, yeah, what have I just heard? That's the idea. We have to show our students that they know something, so that they are not afraid to talk. And to do that, you can use the book you used last year. This book 1 of Get to 100 before you start Get to 100 book 2, right? And one of the things you can try this with the students is you just give them sentences, as you can see some examples, and you tell them, okay, so now very quickly, match them with those structures we learned last year. Okay, a few sentences. Obviously, as you can see, these are all connected with gerund and infinitive verb forms, right? You can tell your students after you've done that very, very quickly. You can tell them something like that. Okay, now I would like you to say you can divide them into groups, or they can work on all those structures. Depends on you, how much time you have, how good your students are, how much they want to cooperate. And tell them, okay, now I want you to write 4 sentences about your holidays, because this is what we're going to talk about. right? What happened? For a very long time, when my students walked into the classroom, I thought that they've already discussed everything about their holidays, but they don't. Because they don't just kind of come and say, so how was your holiday? My holiday was, and then they talk for about half an hour. No, they don't. It's like, how was your holiday? Ah, cool. What happened? I went somewhere, and that's it. So if you tell now, can you please write 4 sentences using each of the structures we've already covered last year, we've worked with, write 4 sentences, and I would like you to use those sentences, and like you can read them to the class, you can read them in groups, and when you read them, other people have to guess which structure you wanted to use. If it's a gerund or an article or a countable, uncountable noun. Sometimes they will guess, sometimes they won't. They will discuss, but learning is in the process of discussing something, not getting the correct answer. This is testing, getting the correct answer. Learning is before that, when you discuss, when you agree, disagree, and you finally come to some kind of conclusion. Okay, so this is what you tell your students. So can you please just write a few sentences using certain structures, but the point is you show them the structures. You show them, see, this is what you already know. This is what we did last year. Remember that, because I do, and I remember doing that with you. Another idea. Oh, you may remember this one. Another idea for making your students realize what they already know is something which is called fist to 5, as you can see here. Sorry, and you take a sip of coffee. I haven't talked for so long, for a very long time, so my throat is slowly kind of refusing to cooperate. So the thing is that you tell your students now, what, I'm going to ask you questions, and I want you to signal to me how much you remember. And now, here's the trick. You have to tell your students to close their eyes when they give you the answers. And how do they give you the answers? Maybe I should start with that. Well, you tell them, okay, can you tell me, this is a question you ask your students, can you tell me what your plans for the next weekend are? Do you know how to say that? Do you know how to express your plans for the next weekend? And if your students they absolutely completely understand, they know how to do that, they know how to talk about plans, they put up a hand with 5 fingers like that. If they kind of pretty well, they will go with 3. If they don't know what you're talking about, how to talk about plans, they have to go with a fist. The thing is that when they do that, you tell your whole class either to close their eyes, or not even close their eyes, but they close their eyes and they kind of put their hands on their desks and just put their hands up. Now, the reason is, well, actually 2 reasons. One, because it's different from everything else that you have in the class, and if it's different, then it's a little bit fun. The second thing is showing middle finger. Okay, I'll talk about the middle finger, and if they if they don't look at each other, they will probably tell you the truth. Okay, because if they see, they will say, okay, everybody has a 5, and I don't know. I'm not going to show my teacher that I'm an idiot. I don't know. I'm an idiot. By the way, when you don't know, you're not an idiot. You just don't know yet. You have to learn it. But okay, so so if everybody is like this, you can see, and it works beautifully. You have this group of the bad thing is that if the headmaster or headmistress of your school walks into the classroom, they may be slightly surprised that you have 20 students sleeping on the desk only with their hands up, right? You'll have to explain yourselves then. That's a joke. You can react. Thank you. So basically the idea is that, they will show you what they know. And, you will see that in lots of situations, they just kind of signal that they know something. And the point is, it's for you, to let them know that you already know something, that you know something about the plans. And you know what? When you ask them, you can ask them, okay, now I'll ask you about, let's say, about different groups of words. So if you can give me 5 adjectives, how many adjectives can you give me describing a person? If it's 5 or more, you show this. If it's 4, that's this. If it's 3, and and if you don't know any adjectives describing a person, just show me your fist. So again, they will show wow, I can say a person is nice, helpful, good looking, tall, smart, intelligent. Wow. Okay. I can. So again, remember, we're showing our students that they have something to offer, that they already know a lot. That this is not like they don't know that. I know it's funny, but teachers unfortunately spend a lot of time trying to prove to the students what they don't know. instead of focusing on showing them how much they know, because they really know a lot, in lots of situations. Okay, so this is what you do with your students. And then, when you introduce some grammar structures, you can tell them, now I would like you to do the following thing. I want you to write a letter describing your holidays, and you use those wonderful structures you had last year, or the structures you mentioned in FIS to 5, so your students know that they remember them. And then you tell them, now I want you to write a letter about your holidays, like 5 sentences, maybe a postcard, not a letter. I know students may not know what a postcard is, but you tell them, okay, so you write this, and then don't sign it. It's important. You don't sign those postcards. You walk around the classroom as a teacher. You take those postcards, and then you put them in front of other students, and other students. If you shuffle those pieces of paper, they don't know who they get those postcards from, so they have to read, look around the classroom, and find the person who was this year I was in Poland. I never went abroad because of this pandemic, but who was somewhere interesting, okay, went to the mountains, or spend the time by the lake, and then they go, and you tell them, okay, now in a moment when I count to down from 5 to 1, I want you to stand up and put the piece of paper in the place where you think the person who wrote that is sitting. Don't give it, but put it. And then you'll have a final situation that some people will get like 5 letters and some people won't get any letters. And you will ask them, is it true, not true? So where did you go? And, again, we're talking, we're having fun. We're talking about holidays, we're sharing opinions. Or those students can read the letter and they can write a question, one more question, like one specific question about the letter, and then find the person and discuss it. Okay? So once again, we're starting with, take a look. It's not just fooling around, it's not having fun. We're revising grammar from the last year. We're revising vocabulary from the last year. You can even ask your students to bring those books, from the last year in the first class, or you can, just ask them if they have them on you. And then you revise what you learned last year. Okay? Creating and the same those wonderful feelings. And now, finally, the thing I really like. The thing is that if you really want your students, to show each other that they know something, this is what you can try. You can tell your students the following thing. You know what? I want you now to write a test for each other, but it's not a usual test. It's not a test which you can fail, and it's not a test in which you look for what people don't know. But I want you to write a test in which your friends will try to prove what they do know. Okay, obviously, there's this temptation that they will write 5 very easy questions. So you tell them, no. We can have a multiple choice question, but this is only 1 point. Or we can have an open-ended question, and this is 3 points. Or we can have fill in the gap with 1 word, and it's also 1 point. Okay, or 2 points. It's more complicated than multiple questions. And you create a test for 5 words. And you give your students, again, take a look. We have this wonderful information, of what we did last year. This could be a vocabulary test. It could be a grammar test. And you tell your students, okay, prepare a test. And then in pairs, they exchange those tests. So you tell students, I want you to prepare something, respect your friends, write something slightly more difficult, but at the same time, write something that they will know. Okay, so this time, students will start thinking, do you think they know this word? Do you know the structure? I think they do. Do we know the structure? And again, you have a revision. You start talking about grammar and vocabulary. And at the same time, you build a wonderful, it's like this wonderful group dynamics kind of situation, where they kind of work together. And they kind of then say, wow, good, you did well. Okay, so you write this. And at the very end, if you want to, you can compile all those questions from your students, and you can create like this one we know everything test for the students, which they will write, by the way, in pairs. Because again, we don't want to test what they don't know. We want our students to work together and show actually to themselves that they already know something. Now, so I have discussed, how to begin this like great adventure. I have given you a few ideas that can show your students what they already know. And now I would like to share something which I believe, is like, again, telling your students that, they something that they can still learn. And this, in some situations will be a little bit like the beginning of a great adventure, telling your students. So, the thing is that, well, students don't know everything, and we can we can assume that students know that we're supposed to teach them, and that's fine. So, why don't we start with something which is called the book scavenger hunt? And, this book scavenger hunt is like, again, telling your students there are things you will learn here. There are things you don't know. So you can start with asking your students a few things connected with the information that you will find in the book. And by the way, these are all things which you can find in Get to 100. So what can you learn at the Harry Potter? Oh, just like, sorry, I can't. I have to think. Harry Potter and the Age of Illusion course at Durham University. What crazy things can you? Can you do when you work at Pixar Film Company as a worker, somebody who works there? Is chocolate highly addictive? What is Eden Project? And, again, you let your students discuss that. You let them kind of hypothesize. Try to get away the mobile phones from their hands, because, the moment they do that, they'll go, oh, Eden Project, what is that? Harry Potter, and then they will start checking that. And we don't want this. We just want to see. So there are interesting things you're going to learn here. There are interesting things in this book. It's really worth opening the book, for you. It's not just like, there's not just like printed pages for you to like to pass and to do exercises, but there is something exciting there, something that you will find. So this is one idea, asking your students about some factual information from the book. Or you can, tell your students, fine, this is the book we're going to work with. Please don't open the book, but I'll show you. We have the first 5 units are titled Human Being, House, School, Work, and Family and School Life. And then, can you please decide which grammar structure goes with which unit? Or if you just like, if you want to, just can write the titles of the units, without giving the numbers, because students, okay, number 1, so it's probably present simple. Okay, so can you please guess with which chapter? See, I did forget one word. Which chapter goes with talking about the future? So can you please write the number 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5? Okay, I won't tell you. If you want to know, you have to check it in Get to 100. But yes, the information is there. See, so again, we're showing our students this is what we're going to do. We're going to talk about the future. We're going to talk about the past. We're going to go over all those things. And again, it's a bit of a game. It's a bit of kind of like, obviously, your students, if they have the book, in the classroom, they'll go like, no cheating, no peeping. It's like, leave the books in the back, at least at that point in the class, right? Or another thing, again, the same. See, the same idea, very close, like numbers of chapters and different kinds of vocabulary, right? And again, which do you think, which go with which? I chose the more difficult ones, obviously. So let's just go very quickly over these. Number 1, human being. Which do you think? Which topic, which vocabulary from those here? But no, we have to choose from the ones I've shown you. This is like number 1, the human being. Is it stages of life, employment and work conditions, renting and purchasing, ethical problems? Yeah, I would think stages of life too, but this is in number 5. Actually, this is ethical problems. Okay, so see, again, your students start thinking, they learn, they may ask you, what is stages of life? What are ethical problems? But you kind of prepare them. You show them, see, this is what we're going to learn. You're going to learn how to talk about those things. This is why you're here in those classes. And you know what? I have something to offer to you. Remember how we talked about, this is a useless school? Well, take a look. We will learn about, grades and course requirements. We'll talk about, how to talk about marks. And we will discuss something like buying or renting a house. If these are too serious, use some easier vocabulary. I chose the difficult ones here because I knew you're good. It would be too easy, for you to if I gave you very easy vocabulary, but there's lots and lots to choose from in the book. So just to show the students, you are going to talk about stuff which is important and personal to you. We can talk about stages of life and employment and work conditions. So this is why it's something which is let's say connected with our lives, right? You can also, if you want to have a bit of fun, you tell students now get the books out, and find the page with the piggy bank, and then you go like and then we'll tell you what the page is, and you can say so how many times is the word ice cream used on page 95? And again, they will go there, they will go to page 95, and they'll check, and they will see that this is like a whole unit on food. My favorite to talk about, not only talk about, as people can clearly see when they meet me in person. So that's the idea, right? You can also, in this this scavenger hunt, you can do something like this. You can ask, is the picture used in reading, speaking, listening, or writing? What do you think? What's your idea? And obviously, people will kind of decide. Students will write. Some of them will look. Some of them will try to find out. Some of them will write, okay, it's reading, it's speaking, it's listening. And then you're like, okay, fine. If this is listening, what do you think the listening is about? And then we'll go like, oh, this is about how young people just sit on the phones and they have no friends and they have no personal relationships. It's like, well, maybe we'll see when we get to Unit 5. We'll see. No, it's not about all of them. It's all only about one. That again, I'm not going to tell you. The trick is you have to be interested enough to look into the book and to look for that and to find it. And you know what? Those of you who work with Get to 100, I hope that a lot of you, but when you get to this picture, you remember this picture, the young people, are you there? Focused, right? Look at the picture. Now, those of you who are right now kind of eating or cooking or playing with your children, lots of fun. I know when you get to this picture, I want you to remember this moment. I want you to remember sitting at home and just like listening to me. And I want you to remember, how friendly I was trying to be with my strange smile. And, when you get to that moment, you will remember this idea. Okay. And that's the whole point, kind of creating this feeling that this is one full course, that we're in it together, that this is all prepared. Okay. Now, a few more ideas for your scavenger hunt. You can tell your students, can you please decide who goes first, on this page? Who's the first person explaining? As you can see, I cut them out preparing this presentation, right? So so which person? Again, it's all about having fun, deciding, okay, maybe this, maybe that, and then going to page 4 and checking. Or, you can ask your students, can you add the numbers in less than 5 seconds? And now, people, I'm giving you less than 5 seconds. Let's see if you can give me the correct answer. 5, 4, count the numbers, add them all. 3, 2, 1, and yes! Is it Janina? Correct. That's the answer. That's the correct answer. Oh, I'm so impressed. You're really quick. Yes, I needed a calculator. But you did that, I suppose, counting in your hand. Really impressive. Okay. See, so that's another, just a trick, getting your students to have fun with the book, and enjoy the book. Now, you just saw the numbers. Can you please tell me what they are connected with? Do you remember? Yes, they were connected with age. These were the words underneath, right? Age groups, absolutely. Yeah. So, but the thing is, again, it's a bit of a surprise, and I suppose that some of you are thinking, oh my gosh, how could I not see that? It's okay. We're human. We don't see everything. I suppose this is the idea. Okay. So, today, I tried to argue that the beginning of your course, the way you start your classes, can be like the beginning of a great adventure. You can walk into the classroom. Basically, when I walk into the classroom, I'm good like, hello, students. How are you? Kind of woo. But this is me. You don't have to do it like that. You can do it in a different way. You're a different person. You have your own feelings, temperament. You know how you function in the world. But we can start something that shows, that basically our education is going to be really a great adventure. We're going to begin it right now, and we're going to continue for the next few weeks. And, doing that, we can also show our students they know something, because we want them to be involved in our classes. We want them not to just to hear and forget, but we want them to remember, and we want them to learn whatever we teach them. This is at least what I want when I walk into the classroom. And we can still achieve that, by telling our students, those classes are not useless. This is not just like, you sitting here, but there is something you can learn here. There is something useful. I hope you remember how we started. We started with this. And now, do you remember how this goes? So tell me, and you can say that, or you can write that, whichever you wish. Teach me, and I... and involve me, and I learn. And that's something that I wish we all can have. Involving classes in which our students learn from us, and we learn from them, because we will get involved, we'll have fun, and we'll do a good job. Thank you very much. While I'm waiting for someone to say probably a few last words at the end of the conference, I would like to thank you very much. I mean, you're really wonderful. Involved. You reacted. You talked to me. I'm sitting in my living room, and at the same time feeling like I'm talking to you, sitting in front of me. Thank you very much. Okay, over to you.
Jacek, do you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you really well.
Oh my God. Finally, I fixed my microphone and headphones. Thank you very much. On behalf of, first of all, of Macmillan Ukraine team, and secondly, on behalf of all the participants of our conference, we would like to say that we do love the things you are sharing with us.
Thank you. Thank you. I love sharing them with you.
You are really a very enthusiastic teacher and speaker and teacher trainer, and I believe that you've managed to light up the fire in the teachers in the beginning of the school year.
I hope so.
There are lots of teachers here who work with Get to 100, and I personally saw a number of activities from this book in a completely new light, and thank you very much for this.
Welcome.
And I do hope to have you on both online and offline events for our country.
Oh, I hope. Yeah, I'm looking forward to visiting your country.
And I would like, in the very end of our meeting, say a few words about the course. Jacek, I'm going to switch into Ukrainian.
Okay, fine.
Шановні колеги, ще раз дякуємо вам за вашу дуже активну участь у нашому сьогоднішньому такому онлайн-заході, онлайн-конференції щорічній Back to School. І хочу сказати кілька слів саме про курс, якому присвячено було останню сесію. Ті, хто працює з Get to 100, знають, що Яцек є співавтором другого видання Get to 100. Хто не працює і не знає, зараз про це дізналися від мене. Наш спікер – це співавтор другого видання курсу Get to 100. Буквально кілька слів, і це буде важлива і корисна інформація для вас. Курс Get to 100 є у переліку рекомендованої літератури, і його можна використовувати як ваш основний підручник. Цей курс відповідає змісту державних програм, і водночас він також готує до ЗНО як бонус. Його особливістю і унікальністю є те, що в ньому містяться на кожному уроці вправи 2 рівнів складності. І ті з вас, хто працює зі старшокласниками і грається у гру ЗНО, розуміє, чому це важливо. Бо на ЗНО кожного року є завдання і рівня Б2. А багато шкіл це загальноосвітні школи, які закінчують 11 клас на рівні Б1. Якщо ви берете на 10-11 клас підручника Б1 рівня, то ви таким чином позбавляєте навіть теоретичної можливості учнів виконати завдання рівня Б2. Є такий міф, який я хочу зараз розвіяти, що це підручник тільки для підготовки до ЗНО, то це не так. Завдяки його гнучкій структурі і модульній структурі він допоможе засвоїти матеріал саме державної програми, і коли до вас приходять учні у 10 клас, погодьтесь, не всі вони знають 1 вересня, що їм потрібно буде складати ЗНО з англійської мови. Але якщо на певному етапі вони розуміють, що так, їм потрібно скласти ЗНО, то Get 200 є приємним бонусом, бо в нього інтегрована ця підготовка, але він підходить не тільки для підготовки до ЗНО, це трошечки більше. Його 7 переваг дуже коротко. Це близько 30 вправ в кожній темі на розвиток лексичних та граматичних навичок, що, погодьтеся, є чимало. Це близько 100 тренувальних вправ у форматі ЗНО, це поради і стратегії. У другому виданні є така штука, як Quizlet. Це безкоштовний додаток для тренування лексики, але доступ до нього йде через код. Це Use of English Worksheets, це ресурс для домашніх завдань ваших учнів. І по коду в книзі для учителя вам доступні тести до кожної теми 2 рівнів складності. Що стосується книги для вчителя, то в другому виданні з'являється така дуже корисна за відгуками вчителів штука, як Smart Keys. Що це означає? Час вчителя на підготовку до уроку скорочується на 40%, бо тут є не тільки правильна відповідь, тут є пояснення, детальне пояснення, чому саме ця відповідь є правильною, а інші відповіді є неправильними. І нарешті у 2021 році саме до другого видання, купуючи оригінальний підручник Get 200, either Book 1 or Book 2, ви стаєте партнерами провідного британського видавництва Macmillan і отримуєте ви і ваші учні доступ до банку тестів до підручника Get 200, які включають в себе діагностичне тестування на початок навчального року, семестрове тестування і у квітні місяці повний онлайн-тест у форматі ЗНО. І перевагою є те, що все перевіряється автоматично. І реалії ось цього тестування, вони наближені до справжнього тесту ЗНО, тобто 60 хвилин на виконання тестових завдань і все, доступ до тесту закривається, є певний результат і у учня, і у вчителя. На нашому сайті Macmillan Ukraine на головній сторінці є банер, натиснувши на який ви зможете отримати абсолютно безкоштовно ресурси, весь перший юніт, аудіофайли до нього, календарний план, поурочний план і зможете подивитися відеоогляд даного курсу. Ну і завершуючи нашу онлайн-конференцію Back to School, я хочу зауважити, що підручники нашого видавництва, вони мають таке гасло, їх всіх об'єднує одне і те саме. Вони сучасні, вони логічні, вони ефективні, вони мотивуючі, і вони мають компоненти, які роблять вчителя готовим до будь-якого сценарію. Онлайн, офлайн або змішаний формат. Через те, що підручники ідуть у безкоштовному супроводі, тобто за це не потрібно платити окремо. Цифрові інтерактивні версії підручників для учнів, це Class Presentation Tools, тобто інструменти інтерактивні для того, щоб проводити онлайн-уроки. Це ресурсні центри для вчителя з вже готовими додатково розробленими завданнями, це генератори тестів, а ще онлайн-робочі зошити, які оцінили дуже високо всі ті вчителі і батьки учнів насамперед, саме під час пандемії, під час онлайн-навчання, дистанційного навчання, коли вчителі, які працюють з даними курсами, які ви бачите у себе на екрані, були звільнені від рутинної перевірки домашніх завдань, адже в онлайн-воркбуці все перевіряється автоматично. І все знаходиться в одному місці на платформі, яка має красномовну назву Macmillan Education Everywhere. На нашому каналі YouTube Macmillan Ukraine є відео-tutorials, а також відеоогляди всіх курсів. І тим з вас, які вже працюють з нашими підручниками, просто хочу нагадати, що у вас є можливість провести діагностику на початок навчального року. Для тих, хто ще вагається і ще не визначився з тим, за яким підручником працювати в цьому навчальному році, адже багато хто вирішує це питання саме зараз, наприклад, для перших класів, для 5 класів, для 10 класів, можливо, десь для 8 класів, то я хочу вам сказати, що роблячи вибір на користь одного з наших підручників, ви також отримуєте повний доступ до банку онлайн-тестів даного підручника, який розпочинається з діагностичних тестів і продовжується різними семестровими та підсумковими роботами. Стаючи партнерами видавництва Macmillan, у вас, як у вчителя, у ваших учнів і у вашого навчального закладу з'являється багато можливостей і для професійного розвитку, і вивільняється дуже багато часу, бо є готове календарно-тематичне планування, є банк онлайн-тестів з автоматичною перевіркою, є можливість брати участь у міжнародних проєктах, і все це є безкоштовним. І також є методичний супровід від нас, методистів представництва. Наші контакти є на сайті macmillanyukraine.com в розділі «Представники в Україні». Від імені всієї нашої команди Macmillan Ukraine я хочу подякувати вам за вашу участь дуже активну у сьогоднішньому заході і нагадати, що протягом 5 робочих днів від сьогодні вам на імейл надійде сертифікат учасника. А також є ще одна дуже важлива інформація. Коли ви заходили на даний вебінар, ви заповнювали певну форму, де давали або не давали згоду на зворотній зв'язок з нами. Так ось, всі ті колеги, які дали згоду на зворотній зв'язок з методистами представництва, отримують кожного місяця, починаючи з 1 вересня, регулярні корисні матеріали з граматики англійської мови для різних вікових груп. Слідкуйте за своєю електронною скринькою, перевіряйте про всяк випадок папку спам, можливо, листи можуть потрапити і туди. Підписуйтесь на нас на сторінці у Фейсбуці, у Інстаграмі і переглядайте наші відео на каналі YouTube. Дякую всім і спокійного, гарного, сонячного вам початку навчального року. До зустрічі онлайн і офлайн.